innings, Ian, in the
I believe
minor
that is
leagues.
correct, yep.
So 7 innings in each game, 5:35 for the first game, and, of course, Sounds Baseball on the Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. And, again, we wish we were out there at First Horizon Park today, but we are not. And so that's because of their doubleheader, so get excited for that. Okay, so I'm going to start on this. Boy, it's been a wild 24 hours for old Will Levis. And I think maybe the most revealing thing that has happened to him over those last 24 hours was his ranking on the Chris Sims quarterback list, where Chris Sims, and again, I didn't even know, I think Sims does this every year. I actually believe, and I could be wrong about this, this started because Blake Bortles said he could name, or Chris Sims said he could name 40 quarterbacks that are better than Blake Bortles, and the Dan Le Batard show challenged him to be able to do so. And so he just started ranking all the quarterbacks that he had better than Blake Bortles. So now it's a top 40 quarterback list. And he's got Will Levis ranked 26th on his top 40 list. And a lot of people will hear 26th, and maybe they'll be upset about it. I don't know. I heard 26th, and I was like, okay. It's bottom third of the league, but it's not, it's not like you're horrendous or whatever it may be. And I think there are probably a lot of Titan fans that get upset. 26th, and then the rest of the list. Michael Penix is 27, Jaden Daniels 28, Bo Nix 29, J.J. McCarthy 30, Ryan Tannehill 31. A little fascinating. Anthony Richardson 32, Sam Darnold 33. Don't be sleeping on Sammy. 34, Bryce Young. 35, Jameis Winston. 36, Jacoby Brissett. 37, Joe Flacco. 38, Kenny Pickett. 39, Gardner Minshew. 40, Jarrett Stidham. And I actually think, this may be one of the kinder lists when it comes to Will Levis, because they have him ahead of Jaden Daniels. They have him ahead of Anthony Richardson. They have him ahead of Bryce Young. Most people have Levis behind those guys, even if Levis has proven more than Daniels, Richardson, and had a better rookie season than Bryce Young. So what I took away from that was Chris Sims thinks that every established starter is better than Will Levis. Now, I don't agree with that, because I don't think at this point Russell Wilson is better than Will Levis. I don't think Justin Fields, who's probably on this list ahead of, I don't think he's better right now than Will Levis. So maybe 26th is a little light. Certainly has Caleb Williams and Drake May ahead of Will Levis. But then instead of getting mad about the list, this is where he is in the list, let's get mad. Listen to what Chris Sims says about Will Levis, and listen to how complimentary it is after he watched the tape of Will Levis to break him down for this list.
So he was not on your list last year.
Yeah.
And he was tied for 5th in your quarterback rankings last year, tied with DTR there. So I think this would be surprising for some people, because you were as down on Will Levis as maybe most people last year.
We're not going to hate, though, just because of old thoughts or old things or whatever. That ain't going to happen here. I still need to see more variety in throws, but I did see more than I saw at Kentucky. There was I saw a few touch throws and things like that. Is he perfect at them yet? No. But at least I know it's in his golf bag, right? So I love that. I hated his pocket presence at Kentucky. I hated it. It was a little like some of the guys we've talked to a little already or talked about, just moving to places where you go, the pocket's perfect. Where are you going? Why are you fading away here and falling into your tackle? Some of that. Is there still some of that? Yes, but you could see he was fighting the demons of it.
He's telling you, he got better. He got better his first year. And so when I think about the things that he says about Will Levis, about his arm, about his ability, when he talks about Levis at 26th on his list, he's sitting here telling you, like, hey, this guy is a legitimate NFL starter, and this guy has the ability to ascend up the list. In fact, Ian, if you could, this is what he said when it came to having Will Levis at 26th on his list. And again, listen to how complimentary. Forget about the ranking. 26th. I don't feel. Listen to what he says about what he thinks of the quarterback.
One more quarterback to talk about. Number 26 on your list is?
Not a rookie,
okay,
but we're treating him a little bit like one. He's still kind of in there, and that is Will Levis, the Tennessee Titans, the number 33 pick from the 2023 draft, right? exceeded expectations, exceeded my expectations. Got to give him a lot of credit. I really do. Because some of the things I didn't love about him coming out in college, I could see that he tried to work on them, get better at them. You saw that on the field. It was tangible that way. I don't think there's any denying a few things about the guy's game, right? The arm is elite powerful. It's up there in the higher rankings of powerful arms in all of football. It really is. He can also really get it out of his hand quickly. And even on power throws, like you'll see like 20-yard out routes and you go, damn, he's almost throwing this like a screen pass and it's like 6 feet off the ground for 30 yards. And you're like, holy sh, that's a throw. Damn, he let into that, right? His athleticism, it jumps out, of course. His presence on the field jumps out. You talk about tough and hang in the pocket with people around you to the very last second and take hits and do all that. I mean, it might be too tough. You might be like, hey, come on, just throw it away. Get it out of here. You're going to get killed. But he did a great job with all of that stuff last year. He really did. And, of course, made some big throws and kept them competitive. A definite good positive start for Will Levis's career.
He's actually saying only good things for the most part about Will Levis. You know, when I take away from that is Will Levis is exactly where he needs to be. He's on the path, which is he demonstrated in year one that he can improve. Because, as Chris Sims said, he hated him at Kentucky in year one. He coming out, he hated him. He hated his pocket presence, hated, the way that he wouldn't put touch on the ball, hated, and he's sitting here saying, his first year, I'm starting to see these things. He's getting a little better with this. He's getting a little better with that. He's getting a little better with. That's why whenever anybody asks me about Levis, I always say I don't know. Because I see the talent. Again, he's talking about Levis driving the football outside the numbers, and it looks like, he's throwing it 5 yards and he's throwing it 30 with a flick of a wrist, saying he's got one of the strongest arms in the NFL. He does. That's why, again, Bill Zimmerman, who I used to work with at SiriusXM, he covers the Bears. And he texted me when the schedule came out, and he said, Will Levis versus Caleb Williams. And I said, here's the thing about Will Levis. I said, Will Levis has the ability to be a Dan Marino-type quarterback. I mean, the ability to be. Not that he's that now. But he also could end up being Blake Bortles. Bortles has a rocket, too. He just can't put it anywhere. And so when I hear, 26th on the list, I think some people will be upset because they'll hear 26th and you think 26th is bad. And you'll say, 26th, he sucks. And there's going to be some guys on this quarterback list that I'm like, oh, God, I wouldn't touch that guy with a 10-foot pole if I was making a list of quarterbacks above Will Levis. Now, I'm not stupid. I'm not a homer. I'm not going to sit here and argue that I would put Will Levis ahead of Trevor Lawrence or Will Levis ahead of Dak Prescott or Will Levis ahead of Brock Purdy. But I would take Will Levis ahead of Justin Fields. I think the league would take Will Levis ahead of Justin Fields. I'd take Will Levis ahead of Russell Wilson. I'd take Will Levis ahead of Geno Smith. I'd take Will Levis ahead. These rookie quarterbacks haven't done anything in this league. I mean, I think you have to give Caleb Williams the nod a little bit because of, how he's viewed as kind of this transcendent potential quarterback prospect. But I got to tell you, when I hear him talk about what he sees on the tape, and again, this is coming from somebody who didn't like Levis when he entered the NFL, it gets me excited. Levis is going to have better coaching. Levis is going to have better wide receivers. Levis has to last year I said that there was no way the offensive line could be as bad as it was the year before, and it was worse. Now, that being said, I feel very strongly when I say that this offensive line this year, based upon who's going to be on the line and who's coaching the line, it's going to be better than it was last year, but I can't make the same promise I made last year that didn't come true. But I assume it's a pretty good chance it's going to be better. So Levis is right where he needs to be. And when I see 26th on that list, I don't look at that and say, he is hating on your quarterback. I actually look at it and I think to myself, hey, he is exactly where, if we're talking about a potential franchise quarterback, he has shown what it takes in year one that he can play in this league. Everything else after it, his ability to adjust, his ability to pick up the blitz, his ability to slow himself down a little bit, his ability to improve his mechanics, all of those things. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But right now, I hear Chris Sims talk about Will Levis, I get excited. If you were to tell me the Titans have the 26th best quarterback in the league, that's not really exciting. But you hear him talk about the things that Levis does, and it is exciting. I mean, I'll tell you guys right now, and I have no idea where Chris Sims is putting him on his list. Tua cannot do the things, talent-wise, that Will Levis can do. He cannot do those things. And I would argue that if you gave Will Levis, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle, and Mike McDaniel, and that offense, that I think that Will Levis would put up some gaudy stats. I mean, that's a Tyreek, go deep. Will, throw it as far as you can. Tua can't do that. And so, I mean, to me, listening and talking about, hey, man, when I watch tape, I see he's better at this, he's better at that. I look at some of these throws, I'm like, wow. I'm looking at some of these, holy, it gets me excited. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. So as we talk about Will Levis, I'm thinking to myself, how big is year 2? How big is it for a quarterback? Because I've always believed these things take time. It takes time to develop a quarterback. It took time to develop Josh Allen. It took time for Tom Brady to become Tom Brady. But at the same time, how big is year number 2? Historically, we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 here on our program today. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Join Cromwell Media along with local athletes and musicians at the Hermitage Golf Course on June 20th for the 615 Open and make a difference while supporting Souls for Souls. Every $20 raised goes to a new pair of shoes for a local child experiencing homelessness. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com.
No, I don't have to say much to Will about that. He's usually pretty dialed in to getting better every day. And, I think he's excited. I think he's excited about what's around him, the players that are on our team, the players that we've added. I think he's optimistic about how he can perform and the jump that he can make from his first year to his second year, which you see a lot with players in the league. He got a little taste of action last year, played some, did some good things, did some things he needs to improve on, but ultimately has enough experience to draw back on it and really make the jump and the improvements in the areas that he needs to as a full-time starting quarterback. And so he should be very excited, but he's also doing the requisite work that's required of him to do his part, and that's been fun to see.
Brian Callahan talking about Will Levis, saying, hey, this is the year, the jump. A lot of guys make year 1 to year 2, got a little playing time under his belt. Now you go to year 2, bang. And there's a lot of truth to that, because historically speaking, the second year is the year in today's era. This is a different era. The rookie wage scale allows you to kind of ditch off a quarterback after 2 years. If Levis isn't the guy and the Titans are terrible, they easily can draft somebody. In the past, you draft a quarterback high before the rookie wage scale, you got to give him a real contract. Remember the day that Sam Bradford was drafted and signed a contract with the then St. Louis Rams, and it made Sam Bradford the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and he hadn't taken a snap. And that was when they were like, okay, we got to stop this. Well, the rookie wage scale has kind of changed things. And now after 2 years, if you're not the guy, for the most part, teams are kind of moving on. Drew Lock has been a backup for the last handful of years. But if you remember, Drew Lock's first year, he was taken in the second round in 2019. Fell out of the first round, was a little surprising to a lot of people. Went in the second round. He was the starter in 2020. The Titans went on the road. The first game of the COVID season. Steven Gostkowski missed about 4 kicks, but he made the one that mattered at the end. And the Titans beat Drew Lock. And Drew Lock was the starter for that 2020 season. Then after that, in comes Teddy Bridgewater. He's a starter. Okay, that doesn't work. They'll move off with them. Then they go and they get Russell Wilson, and they trade Drew Lock as part of the deal. And Drew Lock's the backup in Seattle for 2 years, and now Drew Lock's the backup in New York. Again, Drew Lock had 1 year where he was the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos, and he was taken in the second round. Now, look, some guys have had good second years, and they haven't become franchise guys. Mariota was 26-9 his second year, and Carson Wentz was arguably the best quarterback in the NFL his second year in the league. But that is more the exception than it is the rule. Just like Drew Brees, who wasn't very good his second year as a starter, which was actually his third year in the league, Drew Brees wasn't very good his third year, which gave them the number 1 pick, which allowed them to draft Eli Manning, who they later traded for Phillip Rivers. That's the exception. Brady, Russell, Ben, all won Super Bowls in year 2. Joe Burrow went to the Super Bowl in year 2. Peyton Manning went from 3-13 to 13-3. Mahomes and Lamar Jackson became the league MVPs. Jared Goff went from a bust to the Pro Bowl. Josh Allen, who they really brought along slowly. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, that is an example of a franchise that really, they tore it down and they brought him along slowly and they played defense and they ran the ball and they were okay with losing. And they still made the playoffs in year 2. So I'm not going to just come out and say that, oh, no, this has to be the year that Will Levis proves he's the guy or that he's not the guy. Because, again, Mariota, Carson Wentz, those guys made everybody think they were the guy, and then deep down inside they ended up not being the guy. I also don't think that it's impossible for us to leave this season with a question mark, based upon, well, Levis was good at this, but he wasn't great at that. I also think that, again, injuries happen in the NFL. Levis plays 6 games and is out for the rest of the year. Then can you make up your mind? At that point, I probably would make up my mind only because it'd be 3 years in a row of injuries with Will Levis. 3 years in a row of injuries, I can't trust you. But am I wrong for thinking like, hey, this is the year? Like, this is the year. That, this is when we're going to find out if Will Levis is a potential franchise quarterback. Again, Russell Wilson, even though they won the Super Bowl, Russell Wilson was not slinging the football around the way he was kind of at the end of his Seahawks run, where he was really throwing it to Baldwin and Lockett, and really, they had transitioned from Marshawn Lynch to Russell. But when they won the Super Bowl, that was a defense and running the ball kind of team. That was not Peyton Manning out there telling everybody what to do. They beat Peyton Manning that year. So I keep wondering, am I wrong for saying, hey, this is the year? And if it doesn't work for Levis, they've got their first-round pick next year, which means they could draft the quarterback. They could go the bridge route, the way Tampa kind of decided, Kyle Trask kind of sucks, and they've decided they're rolling with Baker Mayfield and they go the bridge route and see what happens. Pittsburgh gave up on Kenny Pickett after year 2. They're going the bridge route with that Russell Wilson, Justin Fields combination. Kind of feels like this is the year. But at the same time, I wish they just had a little bit better of a team around Will Levis. And I know you'll tell me that they did all these great things in the offseason and that they deserve an award for that or whatever it may be. They did get better players. They still don't have Derrick Henry, but they still don't have a right tackle. They're still kind of fudging it at tight end, which I don't like. I don't know what's on the right side of the offensive line. I don't know who's going to be wearing the green dot on defense. Again, is that the end of the world? Probably not. I don't know, do they have enough to rush the passer? Especially with Danico Autry out there. I wish if they had the better things in place, then the Titans could give Levis a team where he's only got to make a couple of plays a game in order to win those games, which then gives everybody the hope of, wow, this guy, he can be special, a la Russell Wilson in his second year in the league. Brady, his second year in the league. Now, Charlie Weiss told me, he said, when I had Brady, what I was doing was, I was dinking and dunking and running the football, and we were playing defense, and that's great. But then a 2-minute drill in the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden it's like, let's put the ball in his hands. So I wish they had a better team around him, but the reality is, at least from where I sit, that this is the year when it comes to Will Levis. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. A lot of people get upset. A lot of people get upset when everything that their team is doing right now isn't just the best. It's like every move that their team makes, this trade is the best trade we've ever made. Most times it's not really true. That's not really how most things work, not really how life works. But there is one thing that after one day of OTAs, I feel completely and totally certain about. Again, one OTA practice. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Nashville's best deal of the week is Joyland in East Nashville. Joyland is a fun new concept designed by Chef Sean Brock to spread joy through his love of cheeseburgers, shakes, buttermilk biscuits, fries, and fried chicken. Get half off a $30 Joyland gift card now while supplies last. TheGameNashville.com/deals and enjoy the best burger in town.
Coach Callahan's a grinder. He gets it out of you.
Coach Bill Callahan.
Yeah, Coach Bill Callahan. Whatever time frames that you get, any constraints, you're juicing as much all the seconds. You're getting it out of the boys.
Mm-hmm. Has he been like that always? As long as you can remember?
Always, yeah, always. He's always been full tilt all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get, that's how guys get better. Like we were watching yesterday, I think they might have done 40 or 50 different pass sets. And they film every one of them, and he cuts every one of them up to each guy. So you could watch all your reps for the whole day and see how you progressed during the day and got better. But yeah, it's every usable second he uses. It doesn't ever stop.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan on Bussin' with the Boys, talking about his dad, old Bill Callahan. And let me say this. After the first OTA, Kaharski came up to me, and he goes, so what are you going to blow out of proportion today from the first day of OTAs? And I said, well, my biggest takeaway from the first day of OTAs was who wasn't there. But there is one thing that I feel like I can definitively say after day one of OTAs, and I don't care what Coach Mack says. Coach Mack said to me one time, he goes, no IEs, no instant evaluations. I'm going to give you this one. Bill Callahan is so much better than the offensive line coaching the Titans have had. I saw in The Athletic today they have best moves made in the offseason for each team. And the move that they had for the Titans was the hiring of Bill Callahan on the offensive line. And I was a little surprised. I was like, okay, they went out, they added L'Jarius Sneed. And if L'Jarius Sneed's knees are okay, which he says they are, but I'm not convinced that's the case, if his knees are okay, then it's all good in the hood. Then you've got one of the best corners in the league. But Bill Callahan, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that ain't a big deal. Now, I'm not somebody who thinks that Bill Callahan can take a player that's not very good and turn him into a legitimate, starting $20 million tackle. But I'll tell you, after one OTA, it's not even close, the difference between what the Titans had and what the Titans have now. The amount of equipment, and I've been harping on this, whether it was with Trevor or I think I said something on Twitter, like the amount of equipment alone that Bill Callahan coaches with compared to what Keith Carter and Jason Hodeling were coaching with is night and day. It's almost like Bill Callahan said, I'll come. But if I come, not only do you have to buy me a starting center and draft me a tackle, but you have to give me, $30,000 or whatever it is, which is nothing, in NFL terms. But you got to give me $30,000 or whatever so that I can go out here and buy all this equipment that I have for my linemen. So in individual period, we can go over technique and we can actually do something. Whereas under the old administration, I'd walk over there to watch the offensive linemen in individual period. Individual period is basically like the warm-up, but it's where they kind of work on the little things. And I don't get anything out of, watching receivers run through the ladder. I know that, people get on Twitter and they post the video of, here's Calvin Ridley doing the ladder drill and catching a ball versus no defender on air. And fans see that, and they're like, whoa, look at Ridley. That doesn't do anything for me. But what it does do for me is watching the offensive linemen, because I'll go over there and I'll watch them, and they'll be working on, little technique here or there. And so whenever the coach would stop to correct somebody, then I'd sit there and say, okay, well, I guess, Andrew Rupchich needs help with his hand placement because Jason Hodeling stopped the individual period to work on Andrew Rupchich's hand ability. So I would just say, well, look at his technique, his hands, got to work on it. But all they would do is they'd stand in a circle. They'd pair off, and they'd, each guy would pair off. And so it'd be me and Ian would be holding a pad, and Keith Carter or Jason Hodeling would go, turbo! And as soon as he does it, I'd bang into the pad. Then we'd switch. Then I'd hold the pad, and Ian be on the other side of it, and he'd go, turbo! And he'd pop right into it. There'd be a little correcting here or there. Bill Callahan, I'm watching him do these individuals. He's got a sled that is, long like an entire offensive or defensive lines. You got to hit over here, and then you got to hit over there. They have this contraption, which I compared to a hopa the other day. For us Hebrew people, the little hopa where they've got to get down like they're in a stance. This thing keeps them down so they can't just pop their heads up, but they're going to hit the top of it. They got the bungee cords, where not only is one guy getting in shape by pulling the other guy, but the other guy is working on his pass set, trying to drop anchor while the guy's trying to pull him off. And so I'm looking at all the different equipment that Bill Callahan is using. Not only that, Bill Callahan, after a rep, if he doesn't like what he sees, he makes you go again. And he will immediately tell you. I'm watching Bill Callahan coach him, and I'm standing there with Trevor. And, Trevor and Bill Callahan go back, because, gosh, I want to say, Trevor wasn't in Washington when Bill Callahan was, but I think there's some kind of connection there. And, of course, Trevor's covered college football for forever, covered the NFL, and, Bill Callahan was coaching Nebraska, whatever. So I'm watching it with Trevor, and I'm watching him be like, okay, so you see right here, Coach Callahan is going to ask him to go again because he didn't think that rep was very good, and that rep wasn't very good because that guy is not in shape. And so because that guy's not totally in shape, now all of a sudden his strides are getting longer. And so instead of, he's just going to try to get through it and try to get some air, Bill Callahan's going to make him go again so that Bill Callahan can make sure that he gets it right. And I'm watching Bill Callahan correct guys on the fly. And I'm like, this is so different than it used to be. Again, during individual period, I don't watch the running backs warm up. I don't watch the quarterbacks throw it to equipment guys. I watch the fat boys because, again, that's where they kind of go over the technique a little bit. I can't sit there and watch a practice and tell you during the practice about whether or not so-and-so's foot placement was good in a practice where they're not even wearing pads. But I can tell you that if I watched the line coach the lineman, I could see, hey, this guy's getting a lot of talking to by the coach. That's kind of concerning. When I watch Bill Callahan, just, again, the detail that he is coaching compared to what it was in the past is night and day. I mean, it's like it's not even the same sport. And again, Bill Callahan, all the equipment that he uses, he's designed some of it apparently. It's like, it reminds me of when I was in college. And when I was in college and I worked in women's hoops, our head coach and our strength coach, I'm not going to say they didn't see eye to eye all the time because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. And our head coach is very accomplished. Our strength coach, very accomplished. In fact, our strength coach was just the strength coach of the Penguins. But they didn't see eye to eye all the time. And one thing that used to drive the coach crazy is that the strength coach would have, her conditioning tests and things like that they would do. And he's like, I don't care about how fast you can run in the sand. Go run on the basketball court. That's what I care about. I want my players in basketball shape, and I want them running up and down the court in order to get in shape. I don't need them running hills. Run on the court. And I will say that I think there's a time and a place for both. But every single drill that I watched Bill Callahan conduct has some sort of practicality to it. Again, there was a drill where they stood under the hopa, and Bill Callahan would be sitting right there and have them go, and they'd bang into the pad, and that right there was a run-blocking drill, right? Fire off the ball, smack the pad, get into the line. Then the next one, again, is the bungee cords, and that's a pass-protecting drill. And I'm like, man, this Bill Callahan, he's got his special sled that's more like a defensive lineman. That's how these guys, always seem to get better. He knows what he's doing. So when The Athletic says that the biggest addition is Bill Callahan, I'm not going to argue that. When you guys tell me I cannot make any observations after day one of OTAs, for the most part, I think you're right. But not with line coaching. Because it's obvious to me the difference between the Vrabel guys who were not accomplished, but everybody told me they were good, even though I didn't totally understand it. And then the one guy that across the league is considered to be the best, it is not even close. I would be ashamed if I was Mike Vrabel and I walked out to a Titans practice right now. Not that he ever would, but if he walked out to a Titans practice and he saw the way Bill Callahan coaches as opposed to the way that his guys were coaching, he's a special advisor to whatever, at the Cleveland Browns. I'm sure the new line coach of the Cleveland Browns probably does a lot of the things that Bill Callahan was doing. And if I'm Vrabel, I'm sitting there in practice, I'm looking at all this equipment. I am ashamed of what I have with those offensive line coaches. So that's the one thing I will tell you after one day of OTAs. It is obvious how much better the line coaching is, or at least how much more practical it feels like the line coaching is. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your phones. Plus, Chris Sims says Will Levis has something he has to improve on. But I actually don't think it's a big deal. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company here on 102.5-1063 The Game. Purchase your tickets for the Music City Grand Prix at the Nashville Superspeedway Friday, September 13th through Sunday, September 15th at MusicCityGP.com. As the racing station, we have a special offer. Use promo code GAME for a 20% discount now through June 16th. Also, tune into the Indy 500 race on 102.5 The Game this Sunday. Coverage begins at 10 a.m. and is brought to you by Green Trees Company, providing high-quality legal THC products.
The mechanics are still not perfect. He has too many throws where he just uses his hips. It's weird. He doesn't get his legs involved, and he's got too much talent to miss a few of the throws he misses. But all in all, it's still a positive start to Will Levis, and you see some special traits in his physical ability and how it translates to the NFL field, and hopefully Brian Callahan and company can really get that out of him.
There you go. That was Chris Sims saying, hey, Levis got some special traits. Levis has a lot to work on. Levis can be a better quarterback, but he's got those special traits. Got to work on his mechanics. Yeah. That's what Brian Callahan is here for. Like the idea of Levis, a guy that everybody that you've ever talked to says he's a very hard worker. Everybody you talk to. I talked to Mark Stoops about it. Mark Stoops was like, yeah, he doesn't care about the fame or the attention, or he wants to win. You know, he will work as hard as anybody. Well, get him a coach that knows mechanics, knows quarterbacks, and I think you'll get those things ironed out. So as far as, you know, mechanics are huge. You got bad mechanics really doing anything in life. You know, if you host a radio show, you have bad mechanics. You can't get in and out of break. You can't get to the phones. You don't know how to. You're not going to be a very good radio host. But in this case, I do feel, at least, no, I feel certain that in this case, that's what Brian Callahan's here for. And until proven otherwise, Brian Callahan is part of the guru tree, and I trust the guru coach to be able to work out the mechanics. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, speaking of Will Levis, I was okay with Chris Sims' rankings. Sims has him ranked 26th. He still needs to prove himself. But Anthony Richardson being ranked 32nd is what made the list much, much better. You know, I would like to think that I'm the biggest Anthony Richardson supporter that there was going into the draft. You know, I told you guys that at first I watched Anthony Richardson single-handedly beat Utah that year he was the quarterback at Florida. And then I kind of stopped watching Florida for the most part. If they were on, maybe I'd watch it, but I wasn't watching them closely. So when I was hearing Anthony Richardson top 10, top 5 pick, I was like, what? But then I was like, well, the Titans are in the mix for a quarterback. They're bringing all these guys in. So I watched tape. And every time I'd watch tape on Anthony Richardson, my jaw would just hit the floor. I loved everything about Anthony Richardson. I would have traded up to number 1 to draft Anthony Richardson. In this case of this draft, I would have traded up to number 3 with Arizona to be able to draft Anthony Richardson. I would have drafted Anthony Richardson, and then I would have gone to the podium that day, and I would have said, Ryan Tannehill is our starting quarterback. And you guys wouldn't have liked it. But that's what I would have done because I wanted a year to really work, again, on mechanics and learning how to play quarterback and those kind of things with Anthony Richardson, and I'd be ready to unleash the beast this year. That's how much I believed in Anthony Richardson. That being said, Anthony Richardson didn't play last year, so how can you rank him over guys that actually played and were okay last year? I mean, so, again, that's why I feel like, you know, when you put out a list, you got there was some list, I forget what list, and again, who cares, what, you know, what so-and-so said, but there was one list that had Anthony Richardson like top 15. And I was like, you're talking to the number 1 Anthony Richardson believer. Me. Top 15? Not yet. You can say a lot of things. I don't think you can say, you know, top 15. Dylan says, your dad is probably so relieved. He did not get a phone call from you today saying that the Titans don't have any offensive line. LOL. That was the third practice of training camp last year where they were not even wearing pads. It was a Saturday. I walked out of there, and I was like, oh, my God. This line is so bad. This line's so bad. And they made every excuse in the book for him. I think Bill Callahan's a much better coach. I'm not sure Bill Callahan could have coached up Andre Dillard. Do you know what I mean? And right now, this offensive line still doesn't have a right tackle. And I I really struggle with the idea of having a successful team that has no right tackle. Like, that makes me a little nervous. One texter says, can you elaborate on what I've heard? Can you elaborate on what you've heard? So, again, asking me about what I've heard about Nicholas Petit-Frere. I'm shocked you're not concerned about the starting right tackle missing the offensive install. Well, there's two things at play here. Number one, I already bitched about that the day that he wasn't out there on the field. I said, there he is again, not available. And I did that yesterday as well in Jared versus Joe. I think Dylan Radins is going to be a starting right tackle at Tennessee Titans this year. Maybe not week one, but I think he will take the majority of the snaps at right tackle. And I personally hate the fact that they've decided to move him to guard, or at least that's what they've said they're going to do, is move him to guard. Because, I think that Nicholas Petit-Frere is unreliable, and I don't think he's very good, and I think Jalen Duncan is horrible. So if you're going to get those guys reps at right tackle, let's just get Radin some reps at right tackle just in case too. But I absolutely am concerned that Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT,
that PT was not there. I mean, I am absolutely concerned about that. Because, again, it's one practice, but it's the one practice we can see. And, again, he's not available. Andrew says, why am I hearing about this new never-seen-before equipment from Bill Callahan? What the hell were the other clowns doing in the past years? I told you, one guy would hold the pad. The other guy will say, turbo! No. The coach will say, turbo! And the guy will hit the other guy holding the pad. And then they'll switch. So now, again, Ian holds the pad. Keith Carter says turbo. I run into the pad. Then Ian hands me the pad. Keith Carter says turbo. And Ian runs into the pad. That's what they did. That was pretty much it. Like, that was what those guys were doing. One texter says, he'll never say it, but Levis is relieved to have Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan as his coach seems like a better situation for his development. So, again, I can't tell you that Levis thinks that or not. I have no idea what Levis thinks. Remember, Levis is the one who, after the season, was vouching for Vrabel to remain the coach. Not that I care what Levis thinks about who the coach should be, but when you're telling me, well, Levis definitely feels, I don't know that. You're projecting your feelings that you think that Levis is in a better spot because of who the coach is, and I would agree with that sentiment. But I said that all along. I mean, I know that a lot got made when I said clean house, and it's like, how can you do that to the first-year GM? And everybody ignored that I was really just kind of talking about everything, which absolutely included the coach. But I said, they need a guru. I was not interested in any of these defensive coaches. Remember, they interviewed Antonio Pierce. They interviewed Mike McDaniel. They interviewed, again, some of these defensive. They interviewed Dan Quinn. Remember, they interviewed Dan Quinn. Was like, no, because I wanted a guru coach. And so I am more comfortable with a young quarterback with a guru than I would be, again, with Dan Quinn. All right, TD is in the house. Coming up next, TD's takeaways from his vantage point at the first day of OTAs. We'll do that coming up next. Stillman and Company right here at 102.5-1063 The Game. And let's give something away. We're in the giving spirit today, Ian. So let's give something away prior to TD. And let's let that be a pair of tickets to see Jamie Johnson at the First Bank Amphitheater on June 28th. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you will win those tickets to see Jamie Johnson at the First Bank Amphitheater again on June 28th. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It's 3 o'clock on a Thursday, which means it's time for the TD Power Hour. Teron Davenport is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, how are you?
Hey, what's going on, man? All is well.
It was good to see you out on the field the other day, out at OTAs. It was just a little tiny taste. I was telling Trevor when we were walking in, I said, the one thing that I hate about OTAs is it's like, okay, we get, a couple of these in the mini camp, and then it's like 6 weeks off. When it's training camp, it's like, football's here, season. Here it's like a little taste, but it's not, we're not in July yet. We're not at camp yet. We're like football. We're not preseason games right around the corner. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's great.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a short-lived excitement, but hey, man, I'd rather have that than nothing.
TD, let's start with your big takeaways from the one day that we were out there.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the offensive line and just the detail and just seeing everybody, not just the rookies this time, seeing all the offensive linemen. Lloyd Cushenberry, Sadiq Charles, man, these guys, they're some thick dudes, right? And seeing them work on Olga and Bertha, seeing Peter Skoronski, seeing Dylan Radins, all these guys, Radins and Skoronski especially, it looks like they definitely put a lot of work in during the offseason, and it's good to see. Their bodies are built really well, arms very built, and they look like offensive linemen. Like, this looks like a physically imposing unit, and that's definitely good to see. I thought Roger McCreary had a good day, take it for what it's worth. A couple pass breakups, very sticky in coverage, those types of things. I also really liked just Calvin Ridley. You see it on film and you see it, covering a game, but when you're right there on top of it, he's so sudden. Like, I'm talking about, like, sudden, like boom, boom, out and going. Like, it's really impressive what he's able to do as far as getting in and out of his breaks. Now, does that mean he's going to have 100 catches for 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying my takeaway, having seen him in person, is, wow, he's sudden. So those are some of the things that I really pulled out of it. Rashad Weaver also looks like he's
gun show.
Yeah, he's leaner, but definitely, look, you could tell he put some work in too.
So there was one name you mentioned there that I actually want to circle, and that is Sadiq Charles, because I had never heard of Sadiq Charles before when they signed him. I'm like, I don't know who that is. And then, the Pro Football Focus grade said he was terrible.
Stop it.
I know. The Washington, bloggers said that he, when you just do a Google search, and I watched this guy pick up that sled and push it back like 13 yards. I think I was standing with you when he did it. Yeah. And I'm like, this guy is freaking massive, and he is picking up these sleds that, I think Skoronski at one point kind of struggled with that initial burst off one of those sleds. And here's Sadiq Charles just popping it back. So I kind of want your initial impression of what you saw out of Sadiq Charles, because I do think of all the moves they've made this offseason, that one is kind of under the radar, and he may end up being a starter for this team.
Yeah, there's plenty of power that he packs, and as I told you when they signed him, and I don't know what bloggers or who you spoke to, but I mean, speaking to some people that were pretty well tuned in, they always liked Sadiq Charles. The only issue was, and it's the ultimate thing that frustrates a coach, is the injuries. And it's like every time they were relying on him to turn the corner and take that next step and establish himself as one of the guys on the offensive line, some type of nick would happen, some type of ding would happen, and that was the main problem. So now watching him and seeing him, it was known that he was a power player. It was known that he's big. He played left tackle at LSU, so clearly, he's an athlete. And I think, you get him in there and you have him next to his homie from college, Lloyd Cushenberry. I think you have something working there, and now you finally have, okay, well, Dylan Radins isn't just – he's going to have some competition, right? And it's not going to be just a matter of, okay, he's a second-round pick. You want him to start.
I actually would like to see Radins, and I know they view him as a guard. I would like to see Radins back at right tackle, just because, I'm not a huge Petit Frere guy. I'm definitely not a Jalen Duncan guy. And I thought Radence was probably the best right tackle that they had last season, which, again, this is a different year and a different coaching staff and everything else. And then we don't even talk about Brunskill at all. And I know that he's definitely going to be on this team. Mm-hmm. And I certainly could see Brunskill, he's supposedly, go back to his 49er days. He played center, he played right guard, he played right tackle.
Yeah, the versatility.
And so I definitely see, him being on the line in some way or form or fashion.
Yeah, no, I would think that he'll be in the mix. And listen, I wonder, because the thing with Radence that has always been a knock is the strength. And I don't know if I put a guy who has strength as a knock inside, where it's really you're in a phone booth with another bear, right? So I don't know, but we'll see how that works. I think with Jalen Duncan, I think we have to be careful not to shoot a hole in him immediately. Not only was he a 6th-round pick last year, we know that, it wasn't the ideal situation as far as, the things he was learning and just everything with that group. So I wouldn't just shoot a hole in him yet. There's ability there. And with the right coaching, who knows what he could become. So I think it's still good to have him in the mix. Petit Ferrer is just one of those guys where it's like you just got to figure out a way to get him to play meaner, with a little bit more of an edge, more attitude. And I think that's the main thing with him.
What did you think of all the equipment that Bill Callahan's got out there and the way he was coaching them? Again, not to sit here and talk about, with the old coaching staff compared to this, but the equipment, I can't get over the equipment Bill Callahan used because I found it all to be so practical.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I always love about good coaching is it's like, okay, I could see where they need to do that in a game, and that's something. But, yeah, the equipment, even the 5-bag sled, we didn't get to see him work on that, but you saw J.C. Latham work on that in one of the hype videos after practice, and he was just hitting the different bags. And I talked to Peter Skoronski about that same sled, and he was like, man, I was on there and I was gassed. So not only are you working on core, you're also working on endurance. And I think, just the different things. And then no one is talking about that long sled, right? The one sled is just like one long pad.
Yeah.
And you got to hit that one, and it kind of collapses when you hit it. All of these are focused on technique. And Bill Callahan is brilliant. I mean, to be able to take something that you studied and watched and develop a patent, right? Like that's pretty impressive.
That's mailbox money right there. And on top of it, did you see the bungee cords that they had?
Yes, the orange bungee cords. Yes.
I think that's the smartest drill I think I've ever seen, in my years of covering football, because of the way that it forces the guy to drop anchor and try to, pass protect while also getting the guy pulling the bungee. I mean, that's conditioning right there, trying to pull a 330-pound man, in the other direction. And it's like everything Bill Callahan did that I saw on the field, like everything had a purpose to it.
Yeah, I could see you talk to Trevor during practice.
Not only that, you saw this too. Like,
right, you see it, but the good thing is when you have someone like Trevor next to you, you could understand it even better.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And it's funny because you remember I came over and was standing next to you guys a couple times, and I would peek over at Trevor and just look at him, and the look in his eye. I joked on Talking with TD on the podcast. I said he was looking at the drills and everything happening the way I look at Kerry Champion, right? Like it was just such a adoration and admiration. It was, and I get it, man, because it's always when you see just excellence in your presence, like you just have to appreciate it.
The other thing too is Bill Callahan, and Trevor pointed this out, like if he doesn't like something, he stops and makes you go do it again.
Yes. And that's the right way, right? You tolerate things being wrong on a small scale, it adds up to a big one. And I think, there's a saying, you keep letting the small things slide, you be a failure. And he's not letting anything slide.
TD is with us, 615-737-1025. We will hit these at the end of the hour. We will hit the TD questions as we always do. TD brought up Calvin Ridley. Now, they didn't do a whole lot of a lot of competing in OTAs. They did have the 7-on-7, but I do wonder what TD's initial impressions of the wide receiver group, of kind of the pass-catching group. We'll do that coming up next. Stillman and Company, the TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I know he's used to getting a lot of catches. He got a lot of targets last year too. Is it an adjustment for him now that you've got like three veteran, top level receivers? You have to,
Yeah, you have to ask him. I don't know that all these guys all want the ball. That's a great problem to have. And if we got three guys that can go win, then that's fantastic. What I will say is that even right now, we're so focused on teaching the system. And as we get into the game planning process, where we're trying to make sure we scheme touches up for guys and put them in position to make plays. Right now, it's pretty kind of cookie cutter what the offense is, and we'll start to game plan when we get there. But it should afford a lot of opportunities, a lot less double coverage, a lot less cloud. because you have to cover all the guys in the offense, and that's the idea on a good offense, that you stress the defense is where do they deploy their resources, how do they stop whatever player they think is going to be most productive. Sometimes it's by situation, third downs, red zones, however that works out. But I think we have enough guys to put a lot of stress on a defense, and when guys are patient and the ball comes to him, it generally just happens that way. So how he feels about it, you'd have to ask him, but I think it's a benefit for us offensively to have three guys that can, at the receiver spot, that can cause problems.
That was Brian Callahan talking about the receivers. TD with the TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD, you talked about the explosion you saw out of Calvin Ridley. What'd you think, first view of Tyler Boyd and kind of this new look receiving core?
Yeah, well, Tyler Boyd is a guy I always have liked. Even going back to his time at Pittsburgh, I like what he's able to do is just as far as the consistency and how he catches the football. He's not really fast. He's not quick. He's not huge, but he does have some size with him. I think he's smooth. You know what I mean? And he's one of those guys that you just rely on him to consistently be where he needs to be. And just in watching him, it was just good seeing him work through the different routes and things. He caught the ball very well. And again, there's no extreme suddenness or anything like that, but he's just a guy you could just tell he's a polished pro. But then also speaking to him afterward, hearing him talk about how as a part of this trio, how they could help each other and play off of each other. And he mentioned how him working the slot could bring the nickel down and open things up for other guys. Just having that understanding of the way his play could help others and vice versa is a really good thing. And that comes just from an experience of having been in another trio, right, with himself, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins.
Hey, let's not forget the original trio that he was in with Mohamed Sanu and A.J. Green.
Yeah,
that was no slouch of a trio either. The 7-on-7, because I watched the linemen for most of the OTAs, and then I saw the 7-on-7. Levis missed a ball. I think one was either behind Ridley or Hopkins. The other was in front of the other guy. Levis had a very nice throw to Josh Wiley over the middle. Very nice throw. And I do wonder kind of what you thought about Levis in the 7-on-7 period, because it didn't seem like it was clicking, but it's also May 21st or whatever it was, day that they were out.
Well, that's
there.
the thing. It's only May, and there's still a grasp of the offense that he has to have. There's still a feel. Again, we're talking about Calvin Ridley, right, and the way he runs and how sudden he is. That takes getting used to, right? You have to get used to the speed that your receiver plays with. So that's something I think there's nothing to worry about. You're going to expect these types of things as he starts to learn the offense, because remember what's going on with him is he's processing everything as he drops back, and that processing is different because it's still new to him. So you're going to have some inaccuracies and things like that. Now, if we get to August and, we're still talking about the same thing, then it's going to be like, okay, listen, I know it's training camp, but it's time that you got to start ramping things up and get on course.
So one guy I saw out on the practice field who I had thought almost nothing about from, December 20th or whenever until Monday, and then I was kind of reminded, was Nick Westbrook-Akine when I saw him out on the practice field looking like the exact same Nick Westbrook-Akine that he's looked like for the last 3 or 4 years. And it hit me watching that we spend all this time thinking about, there's one football, and there's DeAndre Hopkins, and there's Calvin Ridley, and there's Tyler Boyd, and Treylon Burks is going to have a role, and Okonkwo and Wiley, and the 2 running backs. And I'm like, I know in my heart, TD, that Nick Westbrook-Akine is going to be catching the football. I don't know how. I don't know, under what circumstance it's going to be. I just feel like seeing him out there, it reminded me of, oh, yeah, this guy has been a big part of the passing game for the last 3 years, and I shouldn't just expect that to go away, should I?
No, you shouldn't expect it to go away, and I don't think it necessarily will. It might not be as frequent, but the fact of the matter is you got to stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? If your number is called, that opportunity comes, take advantage of it, maximize it, right? Because that's the only thing that's going to get you other opportunities, and I think that's the way each of these playmakers in this offense are going to have to look at things. You mentioned Josh Wiley making a catch on a nice throw from Will Levis. He better have made that catch, because the next time that opportunity presents itself, Levis is going to look his way. These are the things you have to do in order to make sure that, you're doing everything you can to make that quarterback like, okay, I could go to him. I could trust him. That's really what it boils down to.
If you were Brian Callahan and you were kind of at the whiteboard right now trying to figure out, okay, my game plan, if I were to make a game plan today, how much, given the chemistry between Nick Westbrook-Ikhine and Will Levis, because there were a lot of highlights that Levis had last year where the ball went to number 15. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, as he's working through the chemistry with Boyd and with Ridley, and I'm not paying Calvin Ridley $50 million to throw the ball to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, but at the same time, it's like, how much do I rely on the fact that I know I've got a guy who already has demonstrated chemistry with the quarterback on the team?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I think there's different approaches that I would take to this whole thing. Guys like Ridley, Hopkins, Spears, even Boyd, Okonkwo. Like I take and I look at that, Pollard, I look at that, okay, we're going to scheme specific ways to get these guys matched up against the defense, right? Whereas you got a guy like – and Burks too. Like Burks, in my opinion, I think Burks should have a whole separate package. Okay, we're going to send him in jet motion. We're going to hand it off to him. We're going to send him in jet motion and have him bow out, and we're going to screen it and smoke it to him. We're going to do – that's the way I would look at it with Burks. Whereas I just want you, like how I talked about, a guy like Danico Archer, where you just say go mess stuff up. With Burks, I would say, all right, look, man, I'm going to give you the football. Go make a play. Just do something with it. You know what I mean? But when you have a guy like Westbrook-Ikhine, the way I look at it, he's within the scheme. You know what I mean? So if it's just so happens that he's running the post over top of that dig and the safety comes down on the dig and he's running the post, perfect. We're going to get the ball to him. But he's not somebody I would say, okay, you know what? We're going to get him isolated backside X, and we're going to run post corner because we feel that he could be. That's not the way I would approach it with him, and that's no slight on Westbrook-Ikhine. He's just someone that okay, boom, within this scheme, he's going to find a way to make it happen if the opportunity presents his way.
Well, and not only that, I actually think, too, Ian and I were kind of talking about this during the break, that you remember the game that they played here where I think it was Tart hit the snapper in the neck at the end of the game and they ended up losing. And in that, Jamar Chase didn't play. And Joe Burrow hit some huge throws on the sideline to Tyler Irwin, who was in the spot that Chase would have normally been in. And I almost wonder if NWI maybe is that kind of player that they had in Cincinnati, that instead of saying, okay, Boyd, you go do what Jamar Chase was supposed to do. No, you stay doing what you do, and then we're going to put Tyler Irwin in the spot that we would normally have Jamar Chase, and we're still going to throw the ball to that spot. And I think they can do that with NWI if any of these guys goes out.
Well, and you could do it with Traylon Burks too. And that's why, in my opinion, he still has value, and you don't even think about trading him because guys don't play 100% of the snaps. There's a rotation. You know what I mean? Calvin Ridley runs a 2 go routes in a row. Tyke Tolbert is going to be like, hey, man, let's come. Hey, Zero, come on over here. Burks, get in there. You know what I mean? There's going to be a rotation. And I think this team, they're going to use some 4 receiver sets also. So, I mean, there's going to be opportunities for him, for Westbrook-Ikhine, for, whoever else is on the roster, whether it's Phillips or Jaquan Jackson, whoever.
What did you think about what Brian Callahan said about the running backs and saying that, Spears is a different route runner than Pollard, Pollard more of a smoother runner than Spears? What did you make of that and how you view them using the running backs?
Yeah, I believe he said Spears was like a smoother route runner. But
that might have been where Smooth came from, yeah.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, look, these guys are similar, but they're different at the same time. And on talking with TD, I made the comparison. I went back to 94, and I remember watching Charlie Garner and Vaughn Hebron together, and it was just fun watching that tandem. Similar players, but different also. You know what I mean? So there were things that they did in order to take advantage of their ability, and I think that's what the Titans have to do in Brian Callahan. And he recognizes the differences in them, but there's enough similarities to where you don't have to get one out and another one in order to execute any certain play call. And I think that's the beauty in it, in that you could have guys somewhat different ability but still run the same play and just give a different look.
Do you think that Pollard needs the ball to get going kind of the way Derrick Henry did? Or
No.
can Pollard,
No.
Yeah, you just hey, you're in there, give him the ball, and he can run with it.
Yeah, I think really, and that's something that I asked him at the opening press conference. You know, I pointed out, look, man, this guy has been in tandem since at Memphis, right, with Darrell Henderson. So this is nothing new to him, right? And obviously he was a key in that with Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas. You know, so he's not one of those guys. There's only so many volume backs, right? You got your Nick Chubbs, you got your Derrick Henrys, obviously, Jonathan Taylors, you know, but you have other guys to where, you know, you don't get as many explosive runs, but you get a little more 3 to 5 yard runs, right? So collectively it adds up well. And I'm not saying that, you know, I would take his contribution over Derrick Henry's because, you know, only a fool would say that. But for this role, for what they need as far as the joint backfield, I think he and Spears are appropriate.
And I hear a lot of Titan fans talk about, you know, this is a new age passing offense. I still think they're going to run the ball a lot this year. They're going to
run the ball. It's almost any opportunity Brian Callahan gets, he recognizes and makes sure that he states that this organization was built upon physical football, physicality, right? And, you know, he's mentioned before, or it may have been Denard Wilson, I think it was him, mentioned how, you know, teams that faced the Titans in the past, after they were done, they were like, man, that was a fight, you know, or teams that were preparing to face the Titans like, hey, listen, I know we got to buckle it up, you know what I mean, and get down and ready to fight. So I think that's something that he's going to want to continue. And then remember in his opening press conference, he was like, make no mistake, we're going to run the football when the time comes and when it's necessary. So I definitely think that they're going to be, it's not some pass-happy, you know, run and shoot offense. This offense is going to be balanced somewhat, and I'd say like, you know, 60-40, like that type of ratio.
TD is with us for the TD Power Hour. Coming up next, it's a $55 million question that I have for TD. We'll do that next. Of course, get your phones in. We'll hit them at the end of the hour, as we always do, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
Some of the guys who are not out there on property, maybe rehabbing or something inside, or are they not here?
Oh yeah, no, there's guys rehabbing. There's plenty of guys that because we don't have to put on injury report in the spring. There's guys that have cleanup surgeries. There's things that they have done in the offseason process that they're rehabbing, returning to play. That stuff's all normal procedure for us. And the guys that have any nicks and bruises from the process of even the phase 1 through phase 2, you pull a hamstring and you're part of the rehab process as well. So again, those things don't get reported because we don't have to. But there's plenty of guys that are in return to play protocols and guys that are on a day or two or a week of rehab process. So.
Who's physically on property versus who's not here?
No. I'll let you guys figure that out.
Brian Callahan the other day about, some of the guys that weren't here, who's not here, who's rehabbing, who's all kinds of. TD, I felt like one of those kids that I read about in the Memphis Commercial Appeal a couple years ago. It was around Christmas time. It was a December game. Maybe it was a January game. I can't remember. And LeBron James was coming to town. And those kids had been given for Christmas a pair of tickets to see LeBron play the Memphis Grizzlies, only to have LeBron load manage his way out of that game. And the tears that came, I felt that way when I did not see L'Jarius Sneed on the football field on Tuesday. So I have to ask you the $55 million question. Is this just going to be how it is? L'Jarius Sneed's not going to do things like OTAs in May because of the knees?
No, actually, L'Jarius Sneed was in the building working on his own. So let's pump the brakes and not say that he, was missing or anything like that. He was in the building on his own, getting some work done. Not all work that is done is on the field. There are things that you still have to do within the building also. And, again, this is voluntary, right? We're not talking about it's mandatory to be there. Now, would it be good for him and best for him to be on the field? Yes. But, in this case, they felt that it was important for him to do whatever it was that he was doing in the building as opposed to on the field.
So here's my theory on the voluntary stuff. If you sign the big contract that offseason, you have to go to the voluntary stuff.
Mm-hmm. And just because he wasn't seen on the field
Correct.
doesn't mean he voluntarily omitted being here.
Sure.
Again, he was there. I know for a fact that he was there.
And so I'm actually okay with that. Like, I'm glad that, again, like if Sneed, what I'm worried about is, again, the knees, because it does feel like it's kind of a mystery as to, we all know there's something up with the knee, or else he wouldn't have gone for a third-round pick in next year's draft because he's one of the best corners in the NFL. So we know there's something, but it's like, what is it? How is it? Is it just – I think it's a thing where, honestly, it may be, hey, man, and we don't do anything on those knees that we don't need to do in May and June, and then when it comes time for training camp, then we get into kind of the management aspect of it as opposed to – but I want to know the answer as far as what's up with Sneed and his knees, and if I should just expect him not to be in OTAs because, look, again, the knees aren't perfect, but as long as he can play 17 times on them, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the bottom line is him being able to go out there on the field and play each game that he's asked to play. Would it be much better to have him involved in practice and there all the time? Yeah, without a doubt. In a perfect world, he would be there all the time. But I think right now is not the time to really concern yourself with that. I think, if he starts to miss time in training camp and during the season, then there's area for concern. But remember, he had missed time during camp last year, and he had a pretty good season. So I think he's
practice
capable.
like the first week of training camp and then didn't practice again?
Yeah, it was a lot that he missed. Yeah, absolutely.
Is L'Jarius Sneed the kind of player, given the position he plays? I mean, he is a man corner where he doesn't need to practice.
No, I think everybody needs to practice. You need to, continue to develop that muscle memory. You need to, see the looks. Now, here's the thing. You got guys learn differently, you know what I mean? And, some guys learn well being in the classroom, right? Other guys, man, I got to get out there and I got to, see the receiver run the route and feel, you know, how these routes are going to be comboed and stuff like that. It depends on the person. If he is someone that, you know, can get everything he needs from a classroom, then that's good. But I definitely think that it just enhances the learning process and the comfort level when you're able to go ahead and be on the field.
Should we be worried about T'Vondre Sweat being held back after the first day of OTAs and not doing much, or really, I didn't see him out there at all on the second day, but I did see the video of him walking out there. So Brian Callahan said he's, you know, working through something, and I think PK reported that it wasn't a major issue.
Yeah.
But should we be a little concerned?
It's me. Like, it's me. I wouldn't be concerned yet. It's something, okay, all right, let's remember this and see how it continues to work out. But, you know, him being out there on the field is a great thing, but if he's in the building and he's working on something and rehabbing, then I would much rather him, you know, and especially with a big man like that, if it's, you know, whatever, you got to be, okay, let's manage this. Let's make sure it doesn't get worse, right? We could rest him now. That way we could have him full go, you know, in mini camp or in, you know, training camp, whatever. That's how I look at it.
And then the last one, Petit Frere, not out there. And I thought the way Brian Callahan said it at the podium was like it was the injury that he suffered last year. But then I heard that he's been out there in the other days that we haven't been able to see, that he's been out there and he just is working through something right now, which makes me think maybe it might be another injury. So I do wonder with Petit Frere, you know, the guys that are battling for the jobs, it's like every rep that's missed is an opportunity for somebody else. Dylan Radins, John Ojukwu, one of those guys to maybe climb up the leaderboard a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's valuable time for a guy like Ojukwu, for Leroy Watson and the others who are getting up, Andrew Rupchich. You know, I think you look at Nicholas Petit-Frere, and so here's my thing, and this is where I have a bit of an issue, where Brian Callahan was like, hey, you know, I'll leave that up to you guys to figure out. Well, listen, we can't always figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. We have resources, and we've been able to determine, okay, you know, so-and-so is in the building, so-and-so is missing, right? But, I mean, I think transparency in this case would be good for the player especially because, you know, in the case of look at the L'Jarius Sneed conversation we had to open this up, right?
Yep.
It went from, okay, should I be concerned to, oh, wait a minute, he's in the building and he's doing his own work. Right, I think that benefits L'Jarius Sneed because it eliminates the question of, okay, well, he signed this big contract and this dude isn't even in the building. You understand what I'm saying? So I think that transparency is important because there are some guys that aren't there. I know of a few for sure. You know what I mean? But there's other guys who we didn't see on the field that are there, and I think just being transparent and saying who is and who isn't, I think would be a good thing. Like if asked, okay, hey, look, man, like we didn't see so and so. What's his situation? Oh, well, you know, he has a personal thing that he's working. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
That's different, and I think that would be better.
Who was it? There was a veteran player one year where, you know, Vrabel would never say anything about it, and he just went right to the media and was like, yeah, I was still hurt. I mean, that's why I was having a hard time coming back from the injury because I'm still hurt, so we're working through that.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember who it was.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah, who was that? But
Bud Dupree.
Dupree, yeah.
It was Bud Dupree.
Yeah, with the knee, yeah.
Vrabel was like, oh, yeah, and then Bud's like, yeah, I'm still hurt. It's like, okay, all right, makes sense.
Yeah, and then it changes the whole just viewpoint.
If you told
he's
me,
hurt, he's still working.
If you told me with L'Jarius Sneed, if you said, Jared, here's the deal. Those knees are what they are. But if those knees weren't what they were, then this team wouldn't have L'Jarius Sneed for a third-round pick in next year's draft. So he is not going to ever participate in May because that we're taking time off the knees, and he's going to practice during training camp maybe twice a week, and then during the season he's going to practice, you know, in the walkthroughs and things like that a little bit, but we're just managing those knees so we can unleash him on game day. If they told me that today, I'd be like, okay, all right. Like if that's the plan, makes sense to me.
Well, you know, and the thing is, you do have to remember, like, as I said earlier, it is voluntary. You know what I mean? I think once it's like everybody has to be there. I think if you know you're asked, hey, who isn't there? I think it definitely should be, hey, look, man, like, if you ask a particular, like, okay, where is Robert Johnson? Why isn't oh, well, this, and this. You know what I mean? I think that's the way it should be. But, you know, I feel this way. You could only do yourself favors by being there, even though it is voluntary, right?
Sure.
You only do yourself a favor. Do things come up? Absolutely. Like, life issues come up. Like, these men have a large part of their lives outside of football. So some things may come up, and it might be that day that just so happens to be when we're all able to watch practice that player X isn't there. But that doesn't mean that he was missing the day before or the day after, you know, and that's where the transparency is important. Maybe not, you know, calling the guy out, but if a guy is definitely there, hey, look, you know what? Robert Johnson was here. He wasn't out there the day he was working on something, but, you know, we got to see him the day before, and, you know, we expect him out tomorrow. You know what I mean? Those
Sure.
types of things. Like, there's ways that I think you could defend your players. And that's just something that, you know, as he goes on, Brian Callahan is going to learn different things, and he'll see, you know, how he can help frame the narrative, right, and paint the picture that needs to be painted for some of these players.
All right, your questions for TD are next. 615-737-1025. We'll hit them as we always do. The TD Power Hour is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. TD Power Hour presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Questions for TD. TD, do you want to go to the phones?
Yeah, right to the phones.
Devin from Dover, our phone lines, by the way, are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, do you think the Titans will sign a safety or roll with somebody on the roster?
I think they'll sign a safety. I think you look at the depth there. They do have some, but they could use a veteran guy, and obviously Marcus May is of interest. Being as though he's so familiar with Denard Wilson and vice versa. So I think they will sign one.
Another texter texts in and says, TD, what did you think of the inside backer that the Titans took in the 4th round in OTAs, and what do you think about him and Jack Gibbons and how they'll battle it out on the roster?
Yeah, I think it's really going to come down to what do you want. If you want that athleticism, if you want that sideline-to-sideline ability, I think, obviously Cedric Gray is the better option there. If you're willing to be patient, allow him to grow into that role. Now, Jack Gibbons clearly is someone who is very cerebral. He's has a really good understanding of the game. So he's going to naturally be better initially, but I think, when you get the athleticism side of it and just the matchup ability, the coverage that he brings also, I think Gray would be a better player. And I feel as long as he could get down and be okay with, knowing the assignments and everything, in addition to his, I think he'll be able to play fast.
One texter says, TD, who do you expect to be the 2 starters on the right side of the offensive line?
Yeah, look, at this point, I'll say Sadiq Charles and Nicholas Petit-Frere. I'll go that route. But, it's so early. We haven't even gotten to see Petit-Frere on the field, right? So, there's still a lot to be seen. We haven't even got to see Jalen Duncan either. And as you mentioned, there could be a wild card in Dylan Rayners getting pushed out there. But I think Charles and Petit-Frere are the options.
Do you think Brunskill has a shot maybe at playing right tackle if he needs to?
I don't know that I would want him there. I think Brunskill is better either. Right guard is tough too. He has some tough goings there. I think he's best as like your top guy. Anybody needs off snap, get him in there. I think that's his role.
One texter says, it's a good text. One texter says, TD, what is the difference in the way the Titans plan to use Sebastian Joseph Day and Tavondre Sweat?
I think it still remains to be seen because I don't know how they're going to use Sweat, to be honest with you. But I think when you look at Sweat, I think he's a better pass rusher. I think he's a better option there. And I think, he's someone, Day is like, he's a big body. Like, he could occupy gaps too. But I think Sweat is a guy I think they're going to rely upon a little bit more to be able to collapse that pocket from the interior. That's the way I look at it. They may very well end up bumping him outside too and letting him rush the passer from, like a 5 technique or something like that. But at this point to say, I can't really tell you because I don't even know how Denard Wilson is going to rely more on odd man or even fronts and those type of things.
Kinston is up next here on the program. Kinston, thank you for waiting. You're on with TD.
Hey, what's going on, brother?
What's up, man?
I asked this question to Kaharski, I think, yesterday on the morning show. Mariota did 26-9, touchdown and interception this second year. I think that he went 9-7 in the playoffs. If I could tell you, both you guys right now, Will Levis is going to do 26-9, touchdown and interceptions, and come close to around 4,000 yards. What do you guys think that would equate team success-wise? And you think the team would be wild card, division winners, or possibly more? Thanks, guys.
Yep. So the 2069, 4,000 yards for Levis this year, what's it mean for the team?
I think it means 8 wins. It's just tough, though, because we're just talking about one particular part. Let's say he throws 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and the defense gives up, a bunch on the ground, a bunch of points per game, then it's hard to tell.
It's hard for me to project anything out like – I heard Hutton say this, and I do think that this is really kind of the year that we're going to figure out what Levis is or isn't. But I heard Hutton say that if we end the year not knowing if Levis is the guy or not, then we know that the answer is no. And I can't say that because what if Will Levis plays a great first 11 games or first 12 games and knock on wood, something happens. It's like, well, he had a good 12 games, but then he got hurt, and he got hurt the year before that. So can you rely on somebody? But he had a good game. You know what I mean? Like, all these things are possible. It's just that's why we have to play them.
Yeah, I think that is why you have to play the game. But as far as like knowing whether Levis is the guy, you should be able to know after this year. I think so. But again, like there's so many other things that are involved in it, right? So if he is productive as a passer and he puts them in position to win and they're losing a bunch of games because they're giving up 26 points a game, is that Levis's fault? No. So now okay, you got to go in and tweak that defense a little bit more because Levis has proven that he could get it done offensively, but, this team defensively can't.
One texter into the text line says, TD, I do wonder if the Titans are looking at ways in which they can involve both Pollard and Spears at the same time. Do you think, given the receiving talent they have, that that's possible?
Absolutely. I think it's possible. And you want to be able to use multiple packages. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a pony package where they're both on the field. And I would be surprised if Brian Callahan and Nick Holtz and the crew, I would be surprised if they didn't do that because these are two players that have, the ability to impact in multiple ways. And you get them on the field, now you're creating different matchups and things like that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I have one selfishly that I want to ask. Just popped into my head. So, Tua turned down $50 million a year from the Dolphins. And who knows what that really means, right? Like, what the contract that he actually turned down was. Yeah. But if you were a GM of a football team and you were projecting which quarterback you'd rather have 5 years from today, Will Levis or Tua, who would you rather have?
That's a really tough question because, you're going on something that you've seen actually happen versus something that you think could happen. My question with Tua is I would probably go Levis just because my question with the concussions. I mean, before last year, there was talk of, he may not play too much longer. So that in itself would be something that kind of scared me away.
I take Levis because I don't like Tua.
Yeah.
TD, great stuff as always. Tell us about ESPN Bet Sports.
Yeah, no doubt, man. ESPN Bet is ready to take you through all the huge sports moments this spring. It's the exclusive sportsbook at ESPN, and it has it all, including offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith. From the playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark, there's no better time to be a sports fan. New users get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So download ESPN Bet today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text TN Redline at 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details.
TD, great stuff as always.
Appreciate it.
Coming up next, Brian Callahan went on bussing with the boys, and he told the boys something that the boys wanted to hear. But is it realistic? We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 to the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. The Vols are up 7-3 on A&M. They just hit a massive home run. So it looks like if all things go right for them, they will continue play in Hoover for what that's worth. So Bussin' with the Boys, the Taylor Lewan Will Compton podcast, I listen to about twice a year. They get Derrick Henry on, and Derrick just decides to go out there and spill his guts on Oprah's couch. And then almost every year or every other year, they get Mike Vrabel on, and I listen to that. Now, Brian Callahan has gone on with the boys. And so I sat down and listened to the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. Again, Bussin' with the Boys, not really my cup of tea, but I do know a lot of people like that kind of stuff. And so I listened to the whole podcast, thought Brian Callahan was very entertaining. Thought it was a very good episode. Kudos to the boys on what they have, on a good interview. But there's one thing that Brian Callahan said that I think a lot of people that think like the boys and want to be like the boys, they just eat that up. And that is about what to expect out of the Titans this upcoming season.
What's the expectation we should be having for the Titans? Are we winning it all this year? Is this it?
I tell our guys.
Should I tell
the time.
Jack and Garrett back there, who've been Titans fans since the inception of Tennessee, that we're going to win the Super Bowl?
I tell our guys all the time that we don't make any predictions or promises. So I certainly can't step out here and
that's good media.
And say
that's good media
anything
right
other
there.
than that. I will say this though: I am excited about what we've done, the players we've added. I think they're all, we added with Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd and D-Hop coming back and Tony Pollard mixing him with Tajay Spears, and you get a chance to draft J.C. Latham, and you got year 2 for Peter Skoronski, and now you go sign Lloyd Cushenberry at the center. Like, I feel like there's some really exciting pieces that, if we can put it all together, I think we have a chance. And obviously, I believe in Will Levis. It's a large reason why I took the job, is that I think he's capable of being a really good player, and he has not disappointed so far in the offseason program. He's fantastic. Does everything you ask the way you want it, and I'm excited to see what we have. I'll leave it at that. I think we can put together a competitive football team.
Oh yeah, coach. Basically, like, hey, what are the expectations? And Ian, we should have run this through the coach translator, because
maybe so.
Yeah, what Brian Callahan really said there was, I know everybody says we suck. I don't think we suck. That's what he said. But that's what I took from that. Vegas says you stink. The pundits around the country, they all say you stink. The NFL schedule, one primetime game, and it's not even a standalone game. It's a split doubleheader. They say you stink. But Brian Callahan says he's got higher expectations than everybody else does. And so do Titan fans. I see all the time. Jared, did you see Pro Football Focus said we're going to go 2-15? Actually, no, I did not see that, but I did hear people say that they said that. And I'll just say they're probably not going to go 2-15. But as far as who's right, are the Titans going to be a competitive football team this year that's going to win games, that's going to be, quote unquote, in the hunt? Or are they going to suck like everybody thinks? Last year, I was with the Titans. I was with the Titan fans. I was with the belief that they were being disrespected. I thought they really, really, really needed that receiver that they ended up getting in DeAndre Hopkins. But I felt like the Titans were a player or two away in 2022. And I felt like they had made some changes. Some maybe for the better. Some, I just thought the offensive line couldn't get worse post Dennis Daly, and then it did. But I just thought that the Titans were going to be competitive last season. Had an easier schedule playing the NFC South with teams that stink like Atlanta and Carolina and Tampa Bay. And I really believed. This year, I think I'm going to have to take the other side of it. I will give the Titans credit. They spent a bunch of money and resources this year on the team. I'll give them credit. I like the coach, and I certainly like the offensive line coach, and I will give them credit there. But when I think about the Titans, I still think they have too many holes. Now, I'm not one of you people out there that says that you can't fill all your holes in one offseason. I think you can. But I think the Titans have some holes that you can't get by with, most notably the right tackle position. Again, it's the idea, Taylor Lewan. Play the question Lewan asked again, the way Lewan asked it right here.
What's the expectation we should be having for the Titans? Are we winning it all this year?
Stop it right there. Floyd, how the Titans going to be this year? They don't have a right tackle. I can't get over that. I can get over the fact that they're kind of fudging it at inside linebacker, safety, tight end. I can get over that. That I don't have a problem. Right tackle? I don't know, man. And I think tight end is a critical condition or a critical position for a young quarterback, but I'll let that slide. I like Levis. I like Callahan. I like the secondary, even with that hole at safety. I love Lloyd Cushenberry. But last year, the Titans were bad because the offensive line was horrible. That's why they were bad. The offensive line was horrible, and they couldn't get to the quarterback consistently enough last year. I know Landry ended up with 10 sacks, and I know they had a couple games where they wreaked havoc like Atlanta, but for the most part, they got torn apart because Baker Mayfield just stood back there, just pat the ball, and then deliver it. And I'm thinking to myself, how much better is your offensive line going to be? Left tackle won't be great this year simply because it's a transitioning rookie. Like maybe Latham will be great down the road, but he won't be great this year. At least I don't think Latham will be great this year. Left guard, I'm optimistic about. But he did have a bad year last year. And I am so sick and freaking tired of Skoronski had the appendectomy last year, so, we got to give him a pass for the whole season. He had the appendectomy week 2. Well, he lost 20 pounds. You can gain it. Order some pizza. The center's good. But now you're asking me to believe that the Titans can do this with Sadiq Charles and Nicholas Petit-Frere, and I just can't get there. And then when it comes to rushing the passer, they didn't go get an extra edge guy, so the hope has to be that Landry and Arden Key are enough on the edge, which are probably not. And Danico Autry was a very good, consistent player, and he's not back this year, and now it's a risk on a guy who's 360 pounds who, let's see. Now, I'm sure you guys will tell me that Bill Callahan can do it, and maybe he can. I was very impressed by his coaching at the OTAs and the equipment that he uses and the practicality of the equipment and all of that. But as far as betting on Brian Callahan to be right, throwing it through the coach translator, where Brian Callahan basically told the boys, look, I know everybody thinks we suck. I don't think we suck. I'm rooting for him, but I'm betting against him. I just can't get there. Too many holes. The reason why the Titans didn't win last year, it had nothing to do with Tannehill, Henry, Byard, Simmons, Hopkins, Autry. It had nothing to do with that. They had too many holes. And this year, Levis, Sneed, Simmons, Hopkins, it's like, can that group, Ridley, can that group overcome the holes they still have? And again, I just can't get there, especially considering that they don't have a right tackle. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on that. Speaking of the right tackle position, I am not a believer in Nicholas Petit-Frere. I certainly am not a believer in Jalen Duncan. I know TD said let's not shoot a hole in Jalen Duncan, but I'm not a believer. I thought he should have sat the bench all last year. So what he was last year was terrible. But I've said this. There's one guy that I think might be the best bet at right tackle, and I can't believe I'm saying it. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
You look at Dylan Radin. I have been very impressed with him for the past year. I mean, he struggled when he first came into the league with the Titans. And, he went to North Dakota State, and so he came into a huge, massive jump in competition. And Radin struggled at times. He struggled with his technique, with his footwork. He didn't have the functional strength. But now that he's been in an NFL weight room for a while, you can tell that his strength is much, much better. His conditioning is better. I mean, Dylan Radin was leading the pack as they jogged from one drill to another field to do another drill, back to the other field to do another drill. Radin was way out in front. And then at the very end of practice, after all was said and done, Radin was jogging at a really crisp jog to get all the way into the locker room, and he ran right by me. And he wasn't laboring at all. I mean, he was in phenomenal condition. And that doesn't mean he can play football, but it means that his work in the weight room has been stellar. And I'll tell you this, he has gotten a lot better last year from what he was before when he first arrived with the Titans. And I can see him earning a starting position, whether it's right guard or right tackle this year, because of the way he has grown.
That was Trevor on our show after going to OTAs. Boy, he was loving himself some Dylan Radins. And remember, Trevor was the guy who 2 years ago when the Titans were trying Dylan Radins out of right tackle, was like, he can't do that. Now remember, they played the Ravens in the first preseason game in 2022, and Trevor's like, yeah, Radins can't play right tackle. And Joe was like, oh, no, that's right. Trevor doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know that. And then all of a sudden, everybody realized Radins couldn't play it. Now, Trevor's telling you, I think there's a chance Radins is going to end up playing it because Radins got better last year. And because, quite frankly, the guys stink. That's the reality. So, again, my biggest knock on the Titans for the 2024 season is that they don't have a right tackle. That's not going to change. But I do think the guy who's ultimately going to play right tackle the most for the Titans this year is going to be Dylan Radins. Well, now it's starting to feel like I am captain of Team Radins, which is really something because I have never really believed in Radins going back to the second that he was drafted. The thing is that I really want to point out here, and Joe will absolutely not hear this because he will choose to not hear it. I don't actually think Radins is good. Like last year when Radins played right tackle. Last year, Radins came in fresh off the injured heap and got thrown in there at left guard because Skoronski had an appendectomy, and Xavier Newman-Johnson, who was the Titans' backup guard, through about 2 series made it abundantly clear against the Chargers that he could not play. So they put Radins in there because they had to put somebody in. It's like having a first baseman who can't catch. It's like, who's on the bench? Let's see if you can catch. And that's what they did. And Radins was okay. Then Peter ends up coming back. And Radins played 1 game at left tackle against Tampa Bay. He was abysmal at left tackle. Radins goes back to the bench. They play that Thursday night game against the Steelers. All the right tackles get hurt because they stink. Most notably Petit Frere, who, his arm ends up firing out of his socket because TJ Watt's so much faster than him. And somehow, someway, Dylan Radins ends up back at right tackle. And other than the fact that he couldn't stop jumping offside, Dylan Radins was okay. He wasn't good, but he was okay. In fact, I said last year that if I had an award for Offensive Lineman of the Year for the 2023 Titans, it would go to Dylan Radins. But that has more to do with the offensive line than it has to do with Dylan Radins. And right now, Dylan Radins playing right tackle, what I think is going to happen this upcoming season, even though the Titans think that he's a guard, that, again, has more to do with who's at right tackle than it does with what I actually think of Dylan Radins. Now, let me tell you what I actually think of Dylan Radins. I have a lot of respect for him. I'm not sure he's a very good football player, but I have a lot of respect for him because he was drafted highly, and they expected him to play right away. They released Dennis Kelly. They really didn't replace him. And then they went out and drafted Dylan Radins to play. The same way they let Danico Autry leave in free agency, and they have drafted Tavondre Sweat to play. Radins wasn't ready. It was a bad pick. Not only was Radins not ready, but the year before, he didn't even play football because of COVID. So he comes in, they think he's going to compete for a job, and he's not even active for the playoff game against Cincinnati. So your team has this great season, and you're not a part of it at all. In fact, again, going into the most important game of the season, the coaches are like, no, we want you in street clothes. So that could not be good for his confidence. So then Vrabel and company, they decide, hey, we're going to gift you the right tackle position. You haven't done anything to earn it, but we're going to give it to you. And through 2 preseason games, it was obvious he couldn't do it. So he lost the job. Keeps plugging away, plays a little bit of guard, does okay in that Green Bay game. Dennis Daly's at left tackle. Finally, Vrabel said, I'll give you a chance. I'll give you a chance to play left tackle. Tears his ACL. Rehabs all the way back. Gets in there. Not very good. But by the end of the year, again, if I was the one doing this, and I think I might be as qualified as the guy who was doing this, the old offensive line coach, I would have given Radens the Offensive Lineman of the Year award for the 2023 Titans. That's a lot of stuff to bounce back from. Right? You didn't meet expectations year 1. You lost the job that was given to you no matter how hard you worked in year 2. You tore your ACL after that. Year 3, they're moving you all around after you recovered from the torn ACL. And then you finally find yourself a home at right tackle. So he finally finds himself a home at right tackle. Then Vrabel gets fired. In comes Brian Callahan with the guru. Bill Callahan is the offensive line coach. I'm sure that probably got Radens excited. Then all of a sudden, Brian Callahan starts telling everybody, oh yeah, we're going to play him at guard. So even though he was our best right tackle last year, we're going to take 2 crap bums and put them out there at right tackle to see if one of these guys can do it. Deep down inside, we know they can't. They traded for another guy, Leroy Watson, who's never started an NFL game. We're going to see if these guys can play right tackle, and we're going to put Dylan Radens at guard, where a 6-year veteran in Brunskill's already there, and Sadiq Charles, who they paid real money to, $2.5 million, he's there. So it's like Dylan Radens just keeps getting crapped on, and there's Trevor telling you who was leading the pack, who's in the best shape, who's improving the most, who was impressive in the drills, Radens. So again, I don't think Radens is a very good football player. And I don't think they think Radens is a very good football player. But the number one ability in the NFL is availability. And Dylan Radens has made it obvious that no matter how many times you punch him down, he will get back up. I can't say the same thing for PT. I don't know Jalen Duncan if he's got any shot at doing that. I don't think he does. So my favorite Peloton instructor is Kendall Toole. Ian, I know you don't do the Peloton, but
no,
very popular.
Yes.
And at the end of every single one of Kendall's classes, I do the shadow boxing,
cool.
that she does, and then I do the do the classes. At the end of every class, she puts her fists up, and she goes, "You are worthy, you are ready, and they can knock you down, but baby, they never knock you out." And let me say this about Dylan Radens: they've knocked him down a lot. Every coach they've had has knocked him down. And he still gets right back up every time. And because of that, even though the Titans are going to try 7 other people at right tackle, I'm telling you, he's going to end up being the right tackle of this football team. They've moved him to another position, and he's still going to end up at right tackle this season. You watch. So again, I don't think he's a very good football player. And I think if he were to hit the free agent market, which he is, his contract is up at the end of this year. If he were to hit the free agent market, I think he'd sign a 1-year deal worth like $3 million with $1 million guaranteed. A Scarbini contract. Kind of like Sadiq Charles. He'd sign something like that. And yet, I think he's going to be your right tackle. And I'm not betting against him. I'm betting against him when he plays. But I'm not betting against him being able to win that job based upon who else is there. So if you want to call me captain of Team Radens, go ahead. That's your prerogative. But I'm just telling you right now, he's the one guy that keeps answering the bell. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in on this, so we will. And the Brian Callahan expectations thing, we'll do that next here on Stillman and Company. Let's talk Window Nation. That's right. Hey, Window Nation is my company. And I know, like, there's all these different window companies, and they all have specials, and they all have deals, and they're all telling you that they're the best windows for you. And I can't tell you about those other guys. I can tell you about Window Nation. I can tell you about my experience with Window Nation. I called them for the free in-home consultation. They came out. They showed me their windows. They gave me the whole spiel. And then they checked my windows, and they came back to me and they said, you don't need new windows. And when that happened, I thought to myself, this is the most honest sales pitch I've ever had. When somebody is in the business of sales and they come back to you and they say, you don't need to buy from us, that's how you know they're honest. So I know Window Nation's honest, and it makes me very excited to tell you that if you are in the market for new windows, Window Nation is an honest company. I can't speak for the other guys, but this is serious work we're talking about on your home. Plus, with Window Nation's semi-annual sale, you get 50% off all windows, no interest for 5 years, and bonus savings when you schedule that consult today. Again, 50% off all windows, no interest for 5 years, bonus savings, and that's real bonus savings when you schedule that consult. Again, that's Window Nation semi-annual sale. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Again, call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com.
With the 53rd pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Dylan Radunz, tackle, North Dakota State.
Who the hell is that?
You see the
Who is that?
Who in Sam E?
Who is that?
They wanted Marshall.
Oh, my God. Who is that?
He's so silly.
Who is that?
He's from North Dakota State.
TD, who the hell is this?
He was a guy that some felt would be a first-round pick. You know what I mean? And
he was 2018 second team all MVFC, so there is that. What is MVFC? What are they doing?
This is my Jared, please don't get so caught up
It's
in
not
Power
the school.
5.
It's not the school.
It's not conference.
It's a good
They
fit.
play legitimate football at North Dakota State.
He was Trey Lance's left tackle.
This was my 6th rated tackle in this draft.
Yeah.
May Mark Howard rest in peace. What a great draft night memory that we have over the years. And now here I am saying, hey, this guy used to be playing right tackle. I don't trust the other guys. Again, I'm not saying that Dylan Radunz is good. I'm not saying Dylan Radunz is average. I'm not saying I want Dylan Radunz to be my team's right tackle. I'm just saying I don't think any of the other guys are going to be playing right tackle, so by default it'll be him. One texter to the text line. Let's get to your phones. The phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com at 615-737-1025, who says, if you were Vegas, what are the odds that you're setting on Dylan Radunz being the Titans starting right tackle? So because I saw this text during the break, I was able to kind of make up my own Las Vegas odds, the Las Jared odds on the Titans right tackle position. Now, this is as to who will get the most snaps at right tackle in 2024? Because I do not believe that Dylan Radunz is going to be the starting tackle against the Chicago Bears. But I do think that over the course of the year, he'll get the most snaps. So Radunz would be my favorite at plus 150. So nobody is a minus money favorite. But Radunz is plus 150. Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT,
is plus 250. So Radunz plus 150, PT plus 250, Leroy Watson plus 500. Now we're starting to get out there a little bit. John Ojukwu plus 2,000. I don't think he's going to start, but maybe there's an outside chance. And Jalen Duncan at plus 2,500. Yes, I think Jalen Duncan is that bad. Again, you can disagree, but this is my show. And on my show, I think Jalen Duncan is horrible. Mark in Ashland City says, I feel like Leroy Watson might end up as the right tackle because that's Bill Callahan's guy from Cleveland. I think Radunz will end up starting at right guard. We shall see. So I think Sadiq Charles is the leader in the clubhouse, in my opinion, at right guard. I also think Brunskill, it's like I asked TD, because Brunskill, his rookie year, played some right tackle for the 49ers. And I said, could you see Brunskill kicking out to right tackle? And TD is like, Brunskill's built more like a guard. So I think it's either going to be Sadiq Charles or Brunskill at right guard, which is why I think we're going to see Radunz end up at right tackle. Because left tackle and left guard are spoken for, as is center. And what do they always say? And I hate when they say this. Well, we got to get the best 5 out there. That would be like saying, hey, we're just going to get the best 3 guys at radio. We're just going to stick them out there. Can anybody be a mic 1? Can anybody actually lead a radio show? Drive topics? Take your phone calls? No. Okay. Well, we're just going to get the 5 best out there. That's not very smart. But when it does come to the best 5 out there, I think the best 5, and I'm giving Peter a huge benefit of the doubt here because he was awful last year. And I know you guys with your, his appendectomy, that's not there. I heard somebody today make an excuse about his appendectomy. But your best 5 are Cushenberry, Latham, Skoronski, probably Brunskill, and Radunz. And, maybe Sadiq Charles works his way in there. One texter into the text line says, the goal should be a top 15 offensive line. Realistic and much better odds than last year's 32nd ranked offensive line. I don't think you can get to 15. Like, I don't think you can get to. I think we should be looking more like 25, 22. I think that's probably more. You guys have to remember something. There's no guarantee J.C. Latham is good. Now, don't interpret that as me saying J.C. Latham is bad, because I didn't say that. But there's no guarantee J.C. Latham is good. And they are banking that J.C. Latham will be good. And with Bill Callahan coaching them, you have to hope that, like, maybe there's a chance that he can end up being good. But let's not put the cart before the horse there. Again, Skoronski didn't have a good rookie year. And he was the one that everybody told, he's the most pro-ready, and he sucked. But, yeah, it was his appendectomy, so that's,
Hey, he said he lost 20 pounds because of that.
You know what? I've seen guys have knee surgeries in the middle of seasons come back and be okay. I've seen guys, Aaron Rodgers was trying to come back from a torn Achilles. Now, he didn't come back, but he was trying to. The idea that Peter Skoronski can suffer an appendectomy week 2 and not be ready to play in November.
Well, it's hard to put the weight back on if you're constantly having to practice and do all that stuff throughout the season.
I don't think weight was his problem.
Is it bad that
Weight was the guy next to him's problem.
Is it bad that I saw the J.C. Latham mic'd up video that the Titans put out, and it's starting to sell me on the cheese on Latham a little bit?
What'd he say in it?
I don't know. Just his attitude and the work he was putting in and some of the stuff he was talking about and breaking down some of the huddle and stuff like that. I don't know. I kind of bought in a little bit.
Can he move his feet?
Yeah.
Can he move his feet to get to Will Anderson?
It looked like he was moving his feet pretty good, and he was putting in the extra work. He was hitting one of these slides. They were going, and he was hitting it, and he asked Big Coach if he could move to the other side of it because it was a little heavier. Putting in the extra work, went back out there, put some extra work after practice.
So the idea of hitting that sled and the idea, give me the heavier one, that's a right tackle. Like, again, I'm wondering, can your feet move fast enough so that Will Anderson can't get around you and hit your quarterback when he doesn't know that guy's coming off the blind side? And I don't think there's a hype video that would show me that. But I didn't watch it, so maybe I don't know. Caleb says, what's your view on the over-under with most books saying the Titans at 5.5? Well, we did go game by game last week when the schedule came out. I think I had them at 8 and 9, right? Sounds about right.
I think that's right, yep.
Yeah, I think I had them at 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to take the over. But, Lord, please don't make it the under. If the Titans are as bad as everybody thinks they're going to be outside of the city of Nashville, it's going to be so depressing. I mean, it's going to be so depressing if this is a bad season. And I just don't want that. I want a fun season. I told Ian, you're not really allowed to talk about these things on the air, but our listenership has been really, really good for this station for a long time. But now it's become really, really good, period. Like, really, really good. It's the best it's ever been. And our listenership across the entire station is the best it's ever been. But especially this show. But where this show caught fire was last football season. I don't know how much it had to do with the me and Vrabel getting into it thing, but I knew when that happened, I'm like, this is good for the radio show because we'll talk about this all day. And I think last year we just constantly talked about Vrabel and Rand Carthon and, Diana Rossini's report, and we don't believe this, and we don't think this, and Vrabel said that. And, I mean, by every metric, it's like, yeah, that's what the people want to hear. And last year was a bad year. I've always believed that winning is good for business, our business, that more people listen to the radio when the team wins. I'm convinced of it. And yet, the team lost last year, and we were the hottest we've ever been. So if they have a really, really, really bad season, there's a chance that we might have really, 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 really good ratings and continue the path that we're on right now. But I would pass on that if that meant that I got to enjoy the football season that's upcoming. Like, I want a good season. And when I see over-under at 5.5, I'm like, my God, if it's under, if it's 4, if it's 4-13, it'd be a miserable fall. Miserable. I don't want that. Even though the Stillman and Company program, because, we tell it like it is. And if you're 4-13, you stink. We would be telling it like it is. That'd probably be good for business. I don't want that. I want a good, fun, exciting football season. Don't have to win the Super Bowl. Don't have to make the playoffs. I just want an exciting football season, and I don't know if we're going to get it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So Roger Goodell and company, they've been in town this week, which actually I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised that it hasn't been made a bigger deal that the owners' meetings are going on in town right now. But there is one little nugget that's coming out, and I guarantee you a lot of people are against this. And let me say this. Let me put my hand in the air. I'm for it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Have you ever had a contractor come to your home and it take forever? Of course you have. We've all had that. It's awful. It feels like you've wasted your entire day. That does not happen with Hiller. And I know this because I use Hiller. I go to happyhiller.com. I put it into my phone. And let's say it's plumbing, right? Let's say it's showers out. You just put in there what's going on. And then immediately you get a confirmation to your phone that says, hey, they'll be there Tuesday between 8 and 10. And then at 8, you get a call and they're like, so-and-so's on his way out there, and you can follow the guy on the map. It is so easy to use. They're wonderful. Be a happy camper this month with 0% interest financing for 24 months on select HVAC systems, generators, and tankless water heaters, or take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special. Take care of these systems before those peak summer temperatures hit. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
think I was asked about the idea of playing on Saturday night. And so the idea of it was really just a reaction. There's other alternatives to playing on a Saturday night. And if you had one more week of the season, you'd be playing on President's Weekend. That's how it came up. I wasn't floating something that we're actively thinking about now. It is something that we think about in the long-range context. Again, moving to quality and making sure that we're doing everything possible to bring our fans what they want. And they want, obviously, more football. But I'm not sure they want more preseason football.
We got to bring our fans what they want. More football. You know what else fans want? Playoff games not on streaming services. Can you bring that to us too? Oh, no, you cannot. Okay, thank you. That was Roger Goodell talking about the 18-game schedule. So Roger Goodell floated out the idea at the draft of an 18-game schedule. The union got all mad saying we haven't been asked about it. We need to get, people saying, oh, it's far away, whatever. Let me tell you something about the NFL. If Roger Goodell wants an 18-game schedule, which Roger Goodell does want an 18-game schedule, the owners are going to want an 18-game schedule because it means more money for them. Roger Goodell is going to get an 18-game schedule. That's how this league works. Roger Goodell didn't want the hip drop tackle anymore. The hip drop tackle is gone. That's how it works. So Roger Goodell wants an 18-game schedule. He can't just wave the magic wand and say 18 games. They do have to negotiate this with the union, but he's going to get it. I actually think this may happen sooner rather than later. But let me just say this about an 18-game NFL schedule. I'm 100% for it. Give me an 18th game. And here's why. Normally, I'm against this kind of stuff. Let's add extra baseball playoffs here. Everybody makes the playoffs now. Don't like that. But here's what I love about the NFL. When they added the 17th game, I was skeptical. I was for it because, again, I like more football. But I was skeptical. I thought, well, a 17th game, do we really need 17? I don't. But okay, fine. But now that it's been in practice, I love the extra NFC game. The Titans got to go on a special trip to Green Bay 2 years ago because of the 17th game. The Titans got to host the Seahawks last year because of the 17th game. You might get to sneak in an extra Dallas Cowboy game. And then they are also, because it's first place versus first place, you're going to get good AFC, NFC national matchups that you wouldn't normally have with that 17th game. That has been, I think, an unmitigated success. But I also love the 17th game because of this. The 17th game pushes everything back. As a radio host, I love it. Because the Super Bowl is like the most depressing game of the year for me. Because once the Super Bowl's over, it's like, what are we going to do now? It's like, we've been talking football, and we've had all these football games, and now we go to the Super Bowl, and we sit down with everybody out there at the Super Bowl, have a great time, and you come home, it's like, what are we going to do now? But what's great is now with the 17th game, everything's pushed back a week. It's like Super Bowl, and then there's 2 weeks, and it's Combine. And once you get to the Combine, it's like you're starting the new season. Now it's free agency. Now there's this rumor, that rumor. It's like, yes, eliminate a week of nothingness. Well, you had an 18th game, you're going to eliminate a second week. And not only that, in order to get the 18th game, they're probably going to have to give the players another bye, which means we're probably going to get 2 extra weeks out of this. I'm all for it. I mean, now it's like if you go 18 games, you had an extra bye, there's going to be a week off in between the Super Bowl and the Combine. There may not even be a week. It might be Super Bowl on Sunday, Combine on Thursday. Yes! So I'm for it. I'm for the extra pregame show that we'll do. I'm for the extra game that we'll get to talk about on the radio. And I don't think 18 games dilutes the product the way that, say 162 for baseball does. I'm never going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, I'd rather do this than watch the Titans. No, I watch Titans every Sunday. So, yes, count me in on an 18th game. I'm in. I'm excited about that. 615-737-1025. Add that to the list. So it has been quite the 24-hour period for Will Levis. Boy, I tell you something now. And there has been a lot of exposure that Will Levis has seen over the last 24 hours, especially the exposure of being ranked 26th on Chris Sims' list. And he's ahead of most guys that other people are putting ahead of Will Levis, like Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, etc. So I try to figure out, where does Will Levis really belong? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So Chris Sims has his top 40 quarterbacks list coming out right now at NBC, and he has Will Levis ranked 26th. Jarrett Stidham 40, Gardner Minshew, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston, Bryce Young, Sam Darnold. Not sure I'd be sleeping on Sammy D, but that's on them. Anthony Richardson, Ryan Tannehill, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, and Will Levis. Now, you got to give Chris Sims some credit. You know, a lot of these people, they're putting Anthony Richardson ahead of Will Levis, even though he didn't play last year. They're putting some of these rookie quarterbacks ahead of Will Levis, like Jaden Daniels, not Chris Sims. So it's actually more of a complimentary list, even though I'm sure some people hear 26 and they're like, oh, that's awful. And so I started to think about this, right? Because I'm like, okay, who are the 26 guys ahead of Will Levis? Or I should say the 25 guys ahead of Will Levis. And I think I have the list of guys, although I've come up with 26. And if Levis is 26, that's not right. But here's who I think they'll probably have ranked in no particular order ahead of Levis. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Herbert, Stafford, Stroud, Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Goff, Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, Derek Carr, Tua Tagovailoa, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields. Now that's 26, and if Levis is 26th, then one of those guys is not on that list. I'm guessing maybe Drake May would be the guy that's not on that list, but make of that what you will. There are a lot of guys on that list that I just mentioned that I'd rather have Will Levis than. Obviously, you guys know how I feel about Tua, but he's not the only one. So I thought to myself, okay, how many quarterbacks? Again, forget about this being Chris Sims' list, or this is me. How many quarterbacks in the NFL right now would I rather have than that giant rocket of a right arm that Will Levis has? Here's who I came up with. First, I think we can all agree you'd rather have the elite quarterbacks in the NFL right now than Will Levis, who might be an elite quarterback one day. Most people think not. Maybe. I don't know. But I think we can all agree you'd probably rather have the elite quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and an elite at times, Justin Herbert. Right? Any questions there? No. Okay. I think you'd rather have Matthew Stafford. Even at his advanced age, I think Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback right now than Will Levis. C.J. Stroud is a better quarterback right now than Will Levis. Aaron Rodgers. Now, I don't know, between his bull crap and his Achilles and his age, I don't know what Aaron's got left in the tank. But I still think at this juncture, Aaron Rodgers over Will Levis. Jalen Hurts. Don't think there's much of a question there. Then there's kind of the game managers. You know, there's the game managers, you know, the guys, and then there's a couple that like, you know, Baker, for instance, and I would put Baker right now ahead of Will Levis. But Baker, he's not really a game manager. He's a little too wild to be a game manager. But Baker, you know, you can win with Baker. Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, and I'm going to put Caleb Williams in there, even though I'm not a Caleb Williams fan. I'm going to put Caleb Williams in there because Caleb Williams does have elite quarterback talent. So if this were me, again, just me, and I've got to pick Will Levis or the other guy, I'm taking the other guy 17 times. Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Stafford, Rodgers, Stroud, Hurts, Goff, Prescott, Cousins, Lawrence, Love, Mayfield, Purdy, Caleb Williams. Ian, do you have a problem with any of those guys that I would take over Will Levis?
Nope.
Okay. The rest of the guys that, again, I think are probably on this list. Will Levis or Deshaun Watson? I'm taking Levis. I don't even think this is close. Between what Will Levis, what Deshaun Watson has been through off the field and what he's been through both, on the field of not playing and then getting injured last year and everything else, I think he is a lost cause. I think he is a sunk contract. And his contract is almost immovable because you owe him the money no matter what. Like Russell Wilson's contract, that is a sunk cost for this year. But if they had decided to keep Russell Wilson, then they'd be playing around with money for next year, and they didn't want to do that. With Deshaun, it's all guaranteed, baby. So they got to pay it. So most people will tell you Deshaun Watson over Will Levis. Deshaun Watson sucks. I mean, outside of the game he played against you because Christian Fulton must have been on the take for the other team. Outside of that, like Deshaun Watson was terrible last year. I mean, and then he got hurt. I mean, I just pulled up his stats. I mean, I really think there's a chance that if it wasn't for that Titans game, that those Deshaun Watson stats, he only played in 6 games. I think there's a chance if it wasn't for that Titans game, that those stats would have been so bad that it would be even more of a joke than it is right now. Okay. I'm looking at Watson's stats. Here's Watson's quarterback ratings over his games. 67, 70, 123.4 against you, 0, 107.5, and 74.8. He stinks. I'll take Levis over Deshaun. I'll take Levis over Daniel Jones. And I think right now, if you were to call up the Giants and you were to offer a trade, Will Levis for Daniel Jones, straight up, no extra picks, I bet you they'd make that trade. Like, I think they would take Will Levis over Daniel Jones. I'll take Will Levis over both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Again, Russell Wilson's team fired him with no option at quarterback, and they're going with Bo Nix. That is a firing. Oftentimes in sports, there are business deals that don't work out, and that's why a guy gets traded or a guy gets released because they view him as a $13 million player and he's making 25, and it's like, well, we'd like you to take a pay cut, and the guy's like, I'm not going to take a pay cut, and so you release him. In the case of Russell, they are paying him $39 million this year to not be their quarterback. That is a firing. So, I mean, I like Will Levis. I'd rather have Will Levis than Bo Nix. So I'll take Will Levis over Russell Wilson, a guy who, again, got fired. I'll take Russell Wilson over Justin Fields because I don't think Justin Fields is very good. And the league obviously doesn't think Justin Fields is very good either, given what compensation the Steelers had to give up in order to get him. Now, here's where it gets a little controversial. I would take Levis over Geno Smith. Now, right now, if I had to win a game and I had to put the ball in either guy's hands and I had to say, okay, I need you to go out there and win me this game this week, Geno Smith probably gives you a better chance to win just based upon his experience. But I'd like to see Will Levis with Charles Cross at left tackle and with those 3 receivers of Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, we're going to see Levis with 3 receivers this year, but they're not as good as the 3 receivers he's got there. So I'm not a huge Geno guy. I'll take Levis over Geno, but again, you could talk me into Geno. I'm taking Levis over Kyler Murray. I don't like Kyler's game. I don't think Kyler's very good. I don't think you can win with Kyler. I think that the jury has come back on Kyler. And it is that Kyler Murray is better than a backup, but Kyler Murray is not good enough to win in the NFL. The jury, in my opinion, has not come back on Will Levis. Plus, I think Kyler's small, and Kyler had 1 playoff appearance, and it was abysmal. I mean, at some point, he's been a starting quarterback now for about 6 years. At some point, you need to win some games. I'm out on Kyler. I know Arizona's in, and they got him Marvin Harrison, but I'm out. I would take Will Levis over Derek Carr. Because, again, I know what Derek Carr is, and I don't think it's very good. And then last but not least, I would take Will Levis over Tua. TD, I asked him today, I said, what do you think? TD said that he would take Levis over Tua because of all those concussions. I would take Levis over Tua because I think Tua sucks. Because I think Levis, and again, Levis beat the Atlanta Falcons, the Miami Dolphins, and the Carolina Panthers last year. It's not exactly like he went out and beat the Chiefs. But Tua has proven it to me. Through 2 years, the owner got suspended because he was trying to get rid of Tua. Then they get him Tyreek Hill, and he wins some games. But every game he wins is at noon on CBS. I'll tell you right now, if you were to sit down Mike Tirico, who calls Sunday Night Football, and you were to sit down Spiro Dedes or Adam Archuleta or one of those guys, and you were to say, what do you think of Tua? I promise you'd get two different answers. Because Spiro Dedes is sitting there calling Tua versus the New England Patriots at noon on CBS, and he's like, oh, I think Tua's great. Mike Tirico, meanwhile, gets him against the Chiefs and is like, I sucks. And I think we can all agree, even though some people will not say that. So I would go Will Levis, 18th. Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Stafford, Rodgers, Stroud, Hurts, Goff, Prescott, Cousins, Lawrence, Love, Mayfield, Purdy, Williams, Levis. And I'll take him over Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson. It's hard for me not to put Anthony Richardson on the list of people I take over Levis just because of how much I liked Anthony Richardson coming out. But he hadn't done it yet. So he's I would take Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson over Levis on potential, but Levis did do more than they did last year. So I got him 18th right now. Well, I guess really 20th, because Richardson and Young, I guess, would be 18, 19. So 20th, not 17th. Whoops. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Chris Sims, when he was breaking down Will Levis, really highlighted something that most people that made up their mind before he entered the NFL probably aren't willing to do now. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
One more quarterback to talk about. Number 26 on your list is?
Not a rookie,
Okay.
but we're treating him a little bit like one. He's still kind of in there, and that is Will Levis, the Tennessee Titans, the number 33 pick from the 2023 draft, right? Exceeded expectations, exceeded my expectations. Got to give him a lot of credit. I really do. Because some of the things I didn't love about him coming out in college, I could see that he tried to work on them, get better at them. You saw that on the field. It was tangible that way. I don't think there's any denying a few things about the guy's game, right? The arm is elite powerful. It's up there in the higher rankings of powerful arms in all of football. It really is. He can also really get it out of his hand quickly. And even on power throws, like you'll see like 20-yard out routes and you go, damn, he's almost throwing this like a screen pass, and it's like 6 feet off the ground for 30 yards, and you're like, holy that's a throw. Damn, he leapt into that, right? His athleticism, it jumps out, of course. His presence on the field jumps out. You talk about tough and hang in the pocket with people around you to the very last second and take hits and do all that. I mean, it might be too tough. You might be like, hey, come on, just throw it away. Get it out of here. You're going to get killed. But he did a great job with all of that stuff last year. He really did. And, of course, made some big throws and kept them competitive. A definite good positive start for Will Levis's career.
Okay, that was Chris Sims when he ranked Will Levis 26th. It's funny, Ian, because I hear that cut, and I'm like, that is some Titan porn right there.
Sounds like he should be higher ranked than 26th based on that.
I mean, that is some Titan. I guess I probably need to be careful talking about Titan porn, and
maybe so.
Today probably need to be careful about that one. But anywho, so if I'm a Titan fan, I hear that, I'm like, yeah, Chris Sims, yes. But then when I hear that, he's 26th on the list, I'm like, man, I can see Titan fans being pissed about that. 26th? And let me say this. If this list ends up having Justin Fields ahead of him, I disagree with it. If it has Daniel Jones ahead of him, I disagree with it. But there was one thing that Chris Sims said. A lot of people just decided that Will Levis sucks, period. The end of the story. They don't want to talk about it. Whereas I actually watch Will Levis play. And so do you guys. Malik Willis had hype going into the draft. People thought he was going to be a first-round pick. He fell to the third round because he's short. He went to a small school, and most importantly, because he was terrible. And so Malik Willis falls in the draft. And I watched Malik Willis at training camp as a rookie, and I'm like, he sucks. And what I said at the time was, he sucks right now. And people got so mad. He's a rookie, Jared. What do you expect? And I'm like, that's why I said he sucks right now. I'm not saying he can't get better, but right now he sucks. And then Malik had to go into a game, and you all saw what I had seen in training camp, and you're like, yeah, he sucks. And then last year he went in a game, and it's like, okay, enough's enough. So when Malik Willis had all the hype, he got in the games, he was terrible. I think he's terrible. Will Levis had all this hype, fell in the draft just like Malik. A lot of people thought he was terrible. And because they don't watch Titans, they just conveniently say, oh, yeah, he stinks. Puts mayonnaise in his coffee. He sucks. And they just don't even think about, okay, maybe he doesn't stink, and maybe the reason that he was taken as high as he was, and the reason why people thought he was a potential first-round pick, and why there was talk about him as the second overall pick. And Indianapolis said if Richardson wasn't there at 4, they probably would have taken Levis. Dan Graziano said on TV and told me at the Super Bowl that he had talked to people at Houston in that building that wanted Levis over Stroud. So there's a little something there, right? Well, Chris Sims was a guy who hated Will Levis coming out of Kentucky, but he's changed his tune a little bit. Here's what he said.
So he was not on your list last year.
Yeah.
And he was tied for 5th in your quarterback rankings last year, tied with DTR there. So I think this would be surprising for some people because you were as down on Will Levis as maybe most people last year.
We're not going to hate, though, just because of old thoughts or old things or whatever. That ain't going to happen here. I still need to see more variety in throws, but I did see more than I saw at Kentucky. There was I saw a few touch throws and things like that. Is he perfect at them yet? No. But at least I know it's in his golf bag, right? So I love that. I hated his pocket presence at Kentucky. I hated it. It was a little like some of the guys we've talked to a little already or talked about are just moving to places where you go, the pocket's perfect. Where are you going? Why are you fading away here and falling into your tackle? Some of that. Is there still some of that? Yes, but you could see he was fighting the demons of it.
I mean, he's telling you, he's better than I thought he was coming out because he got better. Isn't that what this is all about? Like right now, I said to Trevor when we were out at training camp, when we were out at OTAs the other day, I was talking to Trevor and I said, as a former player, when you did these things, the OTAs in May, did it drive you crazy that here you are busting your tush and you're not going to play a football game for 6 months or whatever it is? 4 months? You're going to play a football game for 4 months. And here you are busting your tush, showing up for work, everything else. And Trevor's like, no. He said, you can't think like that. He said, if you're a player that loves football and that, is all about it, he said, you're a guy on the Atlanta Falcons. That year they lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots. You're probably thinking to yourself about, God, what could I have done to be just a little bit better, to be able to make a play in that Super Bowl, to win that, to put it over the top at 28-3. And you think about moments like this, and this is where those things happen. Like, if Will Levis is going to be the guy, if that's going to happen, this is where he gets better right now. Clearly, he got better from Kentucky to last year. The one thing for me that I felt like was clear was I thought that Will Levis was layering his passes better. Now, he didn't throw the ball out of the backfield very often. We talked about this. His highlights are all outside the numbers to receivers, not the tight ends and backs. But at the same time, he did make touch throws better in the NFL than he did in college because guys can get better. Tom Brady was not Tom Brady the day he showed up in the NFL. I can promise you that. So then the question has to be, with a better coach, and again, whether or not Callahan is a better head coach than Mike Vrabel, the results will tell us the answer to that. I can't right now say Callahan is better than Vrabel as a head coach. He's different than Vrabel. But as far as grooming a quarterback is concerned, Callahan is absolutely better than Mike Vrabel. He is more qualified than Mike Vrabel. He has a better coaching staff to do that, given the fact that his dad is the offensive line coach and not Jason Houdeling from Colgate. But again, with better coaching, quarterback-specific coaching, that's where he's supposed to get better. So if he can make the leap from Kentucky with Tim Kelly, if he can make that leap, what can he do with better coaching, knowing what the NFL's about, and kind of knowing what to expect going into year 2? And that should get you excited. That a guy like Chris Sims can put aside, again, he's like, look, I had him with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is terrible. Like I think he started one game for the Browns, and they were like, go get Joe Flacco. We can't watch this anymore. And yet he's saying, look, I'm not basing my opinion on Levis off of what I thought going into the draft. He's not what we call rooting for the take. He's not doing that. He's just telling you what he sees. And what he saw was a massive improvement. And that should get you excited because that gets me excited. 615-737-1025. More your phones. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
was the expectation we should be having for the Titans? Are we winning it all this year? Is this it?
I tell our guys.
Should I
all
tell
the time.
Jack and Garrett back there, who've been Titans fans since the inception of Tennessee, that we're going to win the Super Bowl?
I tell our guys all the time that we don't make any predictions or promises. So I certainly can't step out here and
that's good media.
And say
that's good media
anything
right
other
there.
than that. I will say this though: I am excited about what we've done, the players we've added. I think they're all, we added with Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd and D Hop coming back and Tony Pollard mixing him with Tajay Spears, and you get a chance to draft J.C. Latham, and you got year 2 for Peter Skoronski, and now you go sign Lloyd Cushenberry at the center. Like, I feel like there's some really exciting pieces that, if we can put it all together, I think we have a chance. And obviously I believe in Will Levis. It's a large reason why I took the job, is that I think he's capable of being a really good player. And he has not disappointed so far in the offseason program. He's fantastic. Does everything you ask the way you want it. And I'm excited to see what we have. I'll leave it at that. I think we can put together a competitive football team.
A large reason of why I took the job. Brian Callahan says, I'm bussing with the boys. Will Levis is a large reason of why I took the job. Bull crap. Let me just say this. I do think that Brian Callahan likes Will Levis. Now, the constant tire pumping of everybody is a little over the top for me. But again, that's what happens in sports, right? You have an a-hole as a coach, you fire him, you hire a nice guy. And then after a while, eventually Brian Callahan will get fired because these guys get hired to get fired. And so while I would love for him to be, Bobby Cox and win for 14 years straight and retire on his own terms, I feel like it's probably more likely than not that at some point Brian Callahan will get fired. And when that happens, they'll probably go hire a mean guy, because we need discipline and we need structure, and that's just how it is. But I do laugh at this idea that he's sitting there now telling people like, hey, Will Levis, I believe in him. I mean, that's a large part of why I took this job, is because I saw Will Levis and that guy can be my quarterback and I can be, boy, that's convenient. The other job he was getting ready to interview for when he took this one? Carolina. The worst job. And threw a hand and said, I'll take Carolina. I listened when the Titans made the quarterback switch. I went back and listened to old Jared and the GM shows. Just like when the Titans fired the coach, I went back to the old Jared and the GM shows from when they fired Mike Mularkey, and we played cuts from Floyd talking about, what to look for in a coach and things like that. Well, I went back when they switched quarterbacks, and I was listening to an old Jared and the GM show from when they made the switch from Mariota to Tannehill. And one of the topics was about how, Vrabel said when he took the job that he thought he could turn Mariota into a franchise quarterback, and now here he is dumping on Mariota, and, what's that? And the old man laughed. He said, look, he said that when he took the job because he would say whatever it takes in order to get the job, because it's a head coaching job in the NFL. There are 32 of these in the world, and it pays $4 or $5 million a year. That's why he said that. And I think we know that Vrabel probably never really thought Mariota was a franchise quarterback. So Brian Callahan, when I hear that, again, that red meat for the Titan fans, just the diehards that every move is a good move. The Let Rand Cook crew. They went from in J-Rob we trust to J-Rob's the worst and Let Rand Cook. That group. The people that call Brian Callahan Callie, even though they are not his buddies. That crew hears that quote. They're like, oh, yes! Yes! Boy, I just had a joke pop into my head that I didn't make, and I kind of wish I had, but it was even a little too far for me. Sometimes I do have a filter, and one thing just got filtered out that I wish I could have said. But anywho, I don't buy it. I think he interviewed for the job, and he decided to take the job because they offered it to him. And he sat down with Will Levis and was basically like, hey, he's got some things I think are pretty good. And let's see if we can make this guy into a player. Let's see what kind of guy he is. I'll try my hardest. If I can't, then I'll pivot to the next guy. But now he's been around Levis, really likes him, and is like, hey, this is my guy right here, which is good. But this idea that like, oh, no, that's a large reason why I took the job, bull crap. Come on now. I mean, they weren't even looking at quarterbacks when Levis was coming out. They had Joe Burrow. Come on now. Matt says, Callahan did not mention Sweat. Another texter actually texted in earlier today and said that in that cut where Brian Callahan told you about how excited he was for the season, that at no point did he mention a defensive player. And I do think that's crazy, right? Like no L'Jarius Sneed, no Kenneth Murray, no Chidobe Awuzie, no Tavondre Sweat. Just talked about offense. It's like I said, and this is one thing that does make me a little nervous, that I like Denard Wilson because he did the press conference. He talked about how important the pass rush was. And so for a DB coach to talk about how important the pass rush was, it told me that his head was not up his tush. But I am a little worried about Denard Wilson's inexperience. Because the formula for the guru coach is to hire an experienced defensive coordinator, and they didn't do it. Because, again, the guru coach just runs the offense, farms out the other side of the ball, and Wade Phillips runs the defense. Well, they got a guy who's never run a defense before. So that's the one bucking of the guru trend that I didn't like. And it's obvious when he's going to sit there and tell Taylor Lewan why he's so excited for the season and doesn't mention a single defensive player, that he is clearly offense and is farming out the defensive side of the ball to somebody who's never run a defense. That's why I'm like, I'd rather have like a Vic Fangio or a Brandon Staley or a Raheem Morris or like one of those kind of guys that's done that kind of thing. Let's go to Kyle, who's up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hey, Jared. Every year there's a young quarterback that comes out of nowhere and just has a great season. Well, I think it could be Will this year. Last year, watching him, especially against Pittsburgh and Miami, he was throwing guys open. He was throwing to an area on the field and just making our receivers run there and just straight arm strength and talent.
He was not throwing guys open in the Pittsburgh game.
He was throwing it outside the numbers on that Burks crossing to move the chains, keep the first down going.
But that's not throwing a guy
all
open.
The way. He led him enough.
I mean, if you look back in the Pittsburgh game, Will Levis did not. I mean, I was impressed by Levis in the Pittsburgh game because he showed poise and he fired the football down the field and he gave you a chance. But Levis did not have, like, what he did in the Pittsburgh game last year would not be acceptable this year.
I agree. He needs to improve. Needs to everything around him.
Well, he missed Tajay Spears for a touchdown. You can't miss touchdowns year two. This is where, and you have a Jordan Love take, so I want you to get to that. But, like, I'll get back to the Pittsburgh game in a second. Give me the Jordan Love take.
I believe with the weapons we put around him, he could go for 4,000 yards like he did and be a top 10 quarterback and go on and maybe be a wild card and be a division leader like Cincinnati or Buffalo or something like that.
I mean, that's optimistic. Thank you for the call, Kyle. Let me say this about the Levis-Pittsburgh game. In the Levis-Pittsburgh game, he missed Tajay Spears for a touchdown right before the end of the first half. Can't do that this year. In the Pittsburgh game, at the end, he took a low percentage throw, that back shoulder to Burks on a fourth down when Kyle Phillips was wide open underneath. Can't do that. In that Pittsburgh game, when they got the ball at the end trying to come back to win the game, he threw two passes that should have been intercepted. One was a great defensive play by DeAndre Hopkins. The other was a ball that was dropped. And then on the next play, he did throw an interception. And that was still with an extra down and plenty of time left. And it's one thing if there's 5 seconds and you got to throw it. It's another thing if it's fourth down. But in this case, there was more time and another down. And so while I did get excited watching Levis play in that Pittsburgh game on the heels of the Atlanta game, if he plays that way this year, that's a bad game. Like, that's the difference between year one and let's see if this guy's any good and year two where it's like, hey, let's see if this guy can win. There is a big difference. Like, to me, the Miami game is another example of this, where Levis had some beautiful throws. Now, he did throw guys open in the Miami game at the end. He threw one to Spears that Spears ended up fumbling but was just a freaking gorgeous throw. But in the Miami game, we all know about the good stuff, right? Like the way he drove him back and the 2-point conversion and the throw to Hopkins and the little like maneuver underneath for the touchdown and all of that. But at the same time, he threw a pick six to a defensive lineman. And then when the defensive lineman ran the ball into the end zone after he had scored a touchdown, Levis dropped his shoulder and tried to tackle the guy in the end zone because he was mad. That gets you hurt. So a dumb decision leads to a Miami touchdown, and then he does something to get himself hurt. In that same Miami game, he took 2 cracks when he was running the ball. That can't happen this year. Like, those are the things that have to get worked out of the system. And some people will just say, oh, it will. And I don't do that. Like, I don't just sit there and say, oh, no, it'll be fine. I don't do that. I'm like, this is what defines whether or not he becomes your franchise quarterback. This is it. Now, let me just say this about the Chris Sims list that has him 26th. The NFL.com QB index at the end of the 17 season, before the 2018 season, did not have Patrick Mahomes on the list. And the following year, the 2018, going into 2019, had Lamar Jackson 23rd behind Marcus Mariota and Mitch Trubisky. So year 2 is where the separating begins to happen. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
this rivalry's had some spice to it in recent years, and against the backdrop of you got a lot to play for this week. How do you you manage the temperature in a situation like that, where things could potentially get heated given what's going on the last few years?
Chris, I don't feel that way. I don't think the kids feel that way. It's like when you play Tennessee or Florida, or it's just exciting baseball. You got to play well. I know our kids respect Tennessee and their program. There's no doubt about that. We talk about that. But what you can't do is start admiring people you play. You just, we got a good program too, real good program. We've been very consistent. So it's about just trying to play your best baseball and trying to play better baseball than the opponent.
Let me say something now. You got to give Timmy Corbin his due, because Vandy baseball last night, they smoked the Vols. And by the way, congratulations to the Vols. They beat A&M. That was a big win for them. They continue on in the SEC tournament. Vandy takes on Mississippi State tonight. I heard Tim Corbin on with Chase and Joe earlier today. He says he thinks Mississippi State has a good enough team to win the national championship. I'll have to take his word for it. I know the coach of Mississippi State, Chris Lemonis. I think he's a great coach. And he did win a national title a couple years ago. And I believe Lem entered this year on the hot seat, which shows you how the SEC works. But I was getting nervous for Tim Corbin because they had lost 7 in a row to UT, and they weren't ranked in the top 25, and they were on the NCAA tournament bubble, and UT was number 1 and the number 1 seed in the SEC, and maybe going to be the number 1 seed in the tournament and everything else, and all this hype around UT. And it's like, Tim Corbin is a god at Vanderbilt. And I don't know how much longer Tim Corbin's got, but he can name his exit. Whenever he wants to leave Vandy, he can leave. And he could lose to whatever team 100 times in a row, and Vanderbilt fans would be totally fine with it and accept it and suck it up. But the one team you can't constantly lose to is UT. So they won the 3rd game of the series a couple weeks ago. And I was like, boy, I tell you, that's a big one for old Timmy Corbin to get, because those Vanderbilt fans were getting a little restless. Because the one thing they can't do is that they can't be irrelevant in baseball. It's one thing in football, kind of is what it is. In basketball, they certainly don't like it, but it has become what it is of late. But not baseball. Baseball's their sport. And it kind of felt like Vandy baseball was losing its heat. It felt like it was losing its fastball. And losing specifically to the one team that you can't constantly lose to. So they get into the SEC tournament. They play Florida. They need to win that game to make sure they can make it into the NCAA tournament. They win that game, good for them. So yesterday was kind of like I don't want to say playing for pride, because, again, maybe Vanderbilt, we've seen this before where somebody thinks they're good with the NCAA committee and then they're not. But you're playing UT, and there's more on the, it's a rivalry, and you really want to even up the season because they took 2 and you won 1. And to beat them the way they beat them in the SEC tournament yesterday, that was kind of a reminder that, hey, this may not be Tim Corbin's best team. This team's probably not going to win a regional. This team's not going to Omaha. But guess what? Tim Corbin can still win the big games against UT. And I think they needed that. I think those Vanderbilt fans needed that. And now Vandy fans can enjoy the rest of the SEC tournament. Because you can lose today and lose tomorrow, and you know what? It's fine. Because you had a nice stretch right there where you beat UT. You're going to the NCAA tournament. Good for you. And if you're UT, you need to win this tournament so you can get the 1 seed and everything else and host that super regional and try to get back to Omaha and try to win it. That's it for us. We are out of here. Everybody have a very safe Memorial Day weekend. Big shout out, Force Company, going to be taking over the afternoons tomorrow. Good luck. Very excited to hear what they have to say. Everybody have a very safe and happy Memorial Day weekend. And of course, we all know what the reason for the season is, so we thank all of those who serve. That's it for us. We're out of here. ESPN Radio's coming up next. Vandy Baseball later tonight. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.